All right, I think we're good. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Three Fifths News. We are here today with some guests. So, Peter, I'm just going to hand it over to you.
All righty, I'll turn the camera away. That way, yeah, Isaac didn't stay on camera for very long. So two of my guests here are people I met at the Kilroy event about a week and a half ago. So we have Mr. Can I give you guys his real names?
Yeah, go ahead. My first name is Robert.
I was going to say, yeah, Mr. Robert Wu here, and Mr. Alt Monarchist. May I call you by name?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So, Mr.
Like fuck.
Mr. Mark Grigoriev. I'm assuming that's Eastern European.
Yes, it is.
All righty. So this was originally intended to be sort of like a proper post Kilroy, although it's a little after the fact, and there's not much to say that hasn't already been said. But to sort of recap, what did you two think of the event?
Mark, go ahead.
No, Robert, you go ahead first because
okay. Well,
I show up later, so you got more insight than I did.
Absolutely. Well, I personally think that the event was successful in ways that it started from start to finish, despite the last minute changes in the organization. And I don't know so much detail, but all I know is the speaker spoke at the event according to schedule, and I felt like the turnout rate wasn't the best, but it was certainly a lot better than originally anticipated. And it was a great place to meet with like-minded people, and I've learned a lot from both the attendees who attended the event and the speakers who actually spoke at the event. So all in all, I felt pretty inspired.
Okay, well, I would say.
Yeah, Mark, I was going to say, yeah, Mark. What was your take on
it? I would say this. What I gotta say is that we need more events like this because we need to kind of wake up the youth. Like I'm 28 years old, but we need to wake up people who are younger than us. We need to kind of keep them alert. And I'd say we need to have more of a, I guess, what do you call it? More right-wing propaganda. Like so events like these are good, and we need to have more of them. We need to have, let's say, I guess, more flyers, more announcements, and again, because we need more right-wing propaganda to wake up our youth because they're the future of our country. Actually, we're supposed to be the future of our country too. But if we have more of them like this, I think it'll be very beneficial for the next generation.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, do you two follow Styx Hexenhammer?
I do. I follow Styx Hexenhammer.
No, I haven't, but I will pay close attention after this interview.
Yeah, Styx is really good for political analysis. It's kind of weird. He's like the twin brother of Razor Fist. It's kind of weird. They both have long hair.
That's true.
They both have long hair and dress in like black jackets.
By the way, I've only seen one video from Razor Fist ever, and well, it was actually a music review of a band called Stryper, and I'm a big Stryper. Yeah, I'm a big Stryper fan, and so it was actually an accident. I was just kind of curious, want to see what people got to say about my band. And I was thinking, oh, this guy, okay, let's see what he says. And I was like, okay, cool. But then, I noticed, but then later on, noticed that he is actually very popular. So yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of a metalhead. He's also a gamer. He actually did a series of videos called "The Downfall of Gaming Journalism," which, funnily enough, actually predated the Gamergate controversy. It wasn't until video 4 or something like that Gamergate even became a thing. Like he was talking about the downfall of games journalism since before Gamergate even was conceived. And then he just sort of moved on with the rest of the skeptic community, if you will, to sort of be, just sort of anti-social justice. I swear I'll never get sick of his insanely poetically crass rants.
Yeah. Well, with Styx Hexenhammer, again, I was browsing again on accident on YouTube because, I was tired of listening to the same old people that I listen to. I was tired of listening. I mean, I love Steven Crowder. I love roaming. But, I just need some more different opinions. So I just kind of, well, who's this guy? And Styx Hexenhammer shows up, and I'm just like, oh, wow, his videos. although like I kind of noticed that, yeah, his style is unusual. He wears a leather jacket and no shirt underneath. Yeah. But yeah, like and I don't think he claims to be right wing, but
no,
like,
he's a monarchist libertarian. I would probably place him like the problem with the whole left-right paradigm is it's difficult to pin down what the hell a left-wing or right-wing position is consistently. So I prefer the political compass, and I define left and right by economics. So he would probably be fairly well off to the right economically, and then downwards of the libertarian axis. So he's a monarchist. So economically he's right wing. Socially he's pretty liberal.
Yeah, he is.
Peter, do you consider yourself libertarian to some degree, or what do you classify yourself in terms of the political spectrum?
I'm basically center right with some slight libertarian lean. I guess largely I just consider myself new right, which is to say I reject neoconservatism.
Me
but
too.
I reject neoconservatism, but I'm not quite a paleoconservative either. Like I do think that there is a place for the occasional economic restriction domestically. Although I do like the fact that they're very big. Paleocons are very big on like economic protectionism, like tariffs and stuff.
I'm very sympathetic to the paleoconservatism for a while because I used to be a paleoconservative, but I realized that in order to defeat the left, paleoconservatism cannot win in a national level. So having said that, I feel like we should focus on the issues that we have in common to really marginalize the left, both at the voting booth and also at academia. So I just feel like we need to be pragmatic and unite to get on some issues that we agree on.
Yeah, I definitely feel likewise. The problem is that ideally I would like to be a paleoconservative like all the way, but unfortunately with social justice controlling like all the major institutions, I think we kind of need to be a little more militant about stuff. And if necessary, I know this is very unpopular to say, if necessary, I think we need to go the Pinochet or Fujimori route of just cleaning house of all the commies.
And can I jump in right on that one right there?
Yeah.
Basically, because I used to tell people, well, I'm a right-wing libertarian, right? But then but just recently, I guess you could say, like as I transition, my political ideas were transitioning, and after this Trump victory, and then like there's some other things that happened, like that started to change my mind politically. I don't call myself a right-wing libertarian that much. I call myself a far right libertarian.
So
I guess I'm more of a, like you said, like I think I'm more of a Pinochet libertarian.
So economically neoliberal, and you're not afraid to get your hands dirty if you have to protect free markets and property rights.
I still believe in capitalism. I believe in property rights. I believe I believe in business rights, of course, for everybody. Lower taxes, all that stuff. But simultaneously, I'd say we need like a little bit of authoritarianism to enforce such beliefs, because to be honest, like this baby boomer conservatism is what created this neocon problem that we have. Because if you notice that we, like our MAGA people, like MAGA folks, we won the election, but guess who started to come out? All of a sudden, they returned. Neocons. I'd say the neocons have returned again, and
I don't think they'll take over the GOP again. I think they've shat on themselves, frankly, too much. And if you notice, we are sort of kicking out neocons one at a time. I mean, Jeff Flake is not running for re-election in Arizona. John McCain is looking to step down himself. We're beginning to get a few new right Republicans in on the state level. I mean, it's a slow, painful transition, but I do think that the new right will triumph, because people are beginning to realize that minus a couple of economic issues or occasional social wedge issues, what were the real differences between George W. Bush and Barack Obama?
Nothing at all.
Oh, well, when it comes to foreign policy, not much really. I mean, Bush used drone strikes in the countries that we didn't hear about. Then Obama did the same thing. He continued Bush's drone strikes. I believe Obama killed more kids overseas as well.
Obama bombed more brown people than Bush.
Yeah. I believe there was also a meme about that too. Where basically it had the statistics for how many kids in other countries were killed by Bush. Then there's another list of statistics of kids being killed by Obama in other countries, and Obama's numbers were higher. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then you get to the whole then you get to like the executive orders thing. I mean, which really did start to spike under Bush, but like spiked even further under Obama. It's there's like this old saying. It's like neocons want the same things that progressives do, just 20 years later and a little less of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, what Bush and Obama did not realize by expanding the executive powers, they did not expect a guy like Donald Trump to become president.
Exactly, and that's why listening to more libertarian voices, I began to realize, wait a minute, why the hell do we give government power at all? I mean, the Patriot Act was a nice idea under Bush, but when Obama used it, he used it to, start harassing conservative nonprofits, and I was like, oh wait a minute. Why is it okay for the government to have certain powers when my guy's in office, but not when the other guy's in office?
Yeah, basically, I'd agree with you. And I noticed that, basically, Bush becomes powerful, all of a sudden it's okay to harass Democrats, and vice versa. Obama becomes president, it's okay to harass conservatives, Tea Partiers. Because remember that scandal with the IRS? That happened where they were targeting Tea Partiers. At first, liberals said it was conspiracy theory stuff, but then, turns out it was actually a fact. It was true.
Yeah, Razors brought this up before, where it was outright proven, and they pretty much came out and admitted, yeah, we did, and it partially swayed the 2012 election in the favor of Obama. I mean, to be fair, Mitt Romney was kind of a shitty candidate. I mean, he was about he's about as white bread neocon as it got. I mean, he refused to attack Obama on the two biggest, freshest issues: the failure of Obamacare and Benghazi. He knew he couldn't attack him on Obamacare because he tried something similar in Massachusetts.
Romney.
Yeah, Romney.
Peter, I have a question for you. Do you feel that Romney was the last great neocon presidential candidate we'll ever see in our lifetime?
I think that's actually very possible. Because at this rate, it does seem like people are beginning to turn against neoconservatism. There are people who are traditionally Democrats who voted for Trump because they realized that Hillary was the complete perfect extension of the same neoconservative legacy of unnecessary bloody foreign intervention. And then I'm seeing Republicans beginning to wake up too.
I got a question for you, Peter, though.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a difference between neoconservatism and boomer conservatism? I think there is a slight difference, though, because I know there's a lot of boomers, they don't really want to associate themselves with Bush anymore, but they still have some neocon tendencies. So they're not neoconservatives all the way, but they're neocon light. And
you're
basically
talking about tradcons.
What was that?
You're talking about tradcons, basically.
I guess I don't know. I never heard that term.
Something. Tradcon is similar to boomer conservatism, but the difference between the two, Tradcon can go after the far left much more aggressively than boomer conservatism, because Tradcon do not grovel or apologize for telling the truth.
Yeah, tradcon is basically just short for traditional conservatives. Your I guess your religious right of the 90s, you'd call them tradcons, or like World War II era, our grandparents.
I mean, for example, I don't know if those are tradcons, but I noticed that a lot of boomers still support a lot of neocon policies. Basically, they don't want to be associated with Bush, but they still might support some neocon policies and they claim to be new right. So like I don't know if those are Tradcons, but I noticed that a lot of boomers are that way. So I'm thinking, is there like a slight difference between boomer conservatism and neoconservatism?
I'll let Robert talk because it looks like he's been trying to get it.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in. Sorry about the technical difficulty, but let me resume what I just said. A Tradcon believes in borders, language, and culture, and it's safe to say that they are non-interventionists, as opposed to boomer conservatism, where they only distance themselves from neoconservatism on issues such as immigration, major components of the culture war, and as far as foreign policy, they're just neocon light to foreign policy, especially on Russia and Iran and Syria and North Korea too.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But yeah, in a sense, I guess you could say that Romney was sort of the last great, I use that term lightly, neoconservative candidate. Like, I honestly don't think you could make neoconservatism palatable anymore to people the more they realize that they've been betrayed.
Thank goodness. The neoconservatism as an ideology is dying. Because look, I don't know any major name millennials who will proudly take the mantle of neoconservatism as an ideology.
I know one. I
think I know. Are you talking about when you say one? Are you talking about one famous blogger, or are you talking about just an individual?
No, I mean the former president of the UTEP College Republicans. His name was Justin Cruz. I mean, God bless his soul. But
I have no idea who the heck he is.
Well, I would say maybe, like, this is my opinion, but I would say Ben Shapiro is more like neocon light.
Yeah, he definitely strikes me as very sort of normie conservative, and I won't lie. I think a lot of the guys at the Rebel are, and notice that all the new right guys like left, or John Cardillo even like actually bowed to the whole Syria gas their own people narrative. Yeah. And I honestly think that's because of Ezra Levant. I mean, I've heard some rumors.
Like I don't know if we should go any deeper than that.
Okay, dude. I'm a Christian. I'm pro-Israel. All right. Yeah. I believe that Palestine has no legitimate claim to that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% as well. So basically, like, I'm a Christian too. So like, again, like, we agree on that one. So.
But that being said, I can criticize Israel just like I can criticize any other nation, which is that's
the thing. And that's the thing, by saying what you just said right now, like, you will be criticized by a lot of the boomer conservatives just for saying that.
Yes, they are extremely like defensive of Israel, and I am too. Like, I honestly think that for the most part, Israel has acted extremely ethically in its conflict with Palestine. You know, and they've made more than enough fair concessions for coming to the table for a two-state solution. But Palestine just upends the chessboard, shits all over it, and then tries to say that they won. You know?
Yeah.
You know, but that being said, I'm starting to see what a lot of your more vicious anti-Semites mean when they say that Israel sort of has, or Jewish people have a lot of conflict of interest when it comes to Israel, that Israel can do no wrong, no matter how shady some of their practices might occasionally be.
Yeah, and that's the thing about that's. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Robert. Let Robert jump in.
The problem with anti-Semites is they are so hyper-focused on one group, and they have never, it seems to me, they have never met a decent Jewish person who would otherwise agree with them on even all the issues. So I really think what they're doing, and I won't name names, they are not helping our cause at all. And I don't even consider them as conservative, because they don't respect Israel's sovereignty, just as anybody has the right to be sovereign from any outside influences. So having said that, I support Israel's right to exist as a sovereign nation, and I hope that Palestinians and Israelis will one day take a more pragmatic approach and say, look, I know we don't get along very well, and it's very obvious that we will never agree on 100% of the issues. So let's, forget about the past too much and focus on the future. But I hope from their end, they'll be able to work out some sort of a sensible deal. But I just felt like the United States should focus on taking care of our own issues while, standing up to Israel, supporting Israel in spirit, because at some point we cannot be the policemen of the world, because we could only hope and pray that all other countries will be better off than they are now. But at some point we got to take care of ourselves first before we worry about the rest of the world.
Yeah, well,
that's the kind of stuff that like Ron Paul and stuff. Like I'm not like a Ron Paul, Rand Paul or Pat Buchanan kind of guy. I think they have some good points every now and then. But they've talked about that too, that Israel is more than well equipped to deal with Palestine. I mean, I do think it's important for us to keep a military presence in Israel, just like I think it's important to keep a military presence in Japan and South Korea, in Europe, like all of our allies. But I definitely think we need to back off from the more hawkish attitude we have and let our allies generally handle themselves. I mean, whereas, we provide material support every now and then.
Well, that's the thing when people say that, like, we don't control NATO. Technically, we do. It's like basically, basically our allies. Like, I know this might insult some people, but like basically, our allies not really allies. They're more like vassals. And we need to actually step out of the way and let them do their own jobs. And like, maybe if they want us to have a military base in their country, fine. That's up to them. It's their country. And going back to Israel, I'd say, yeah, like I believe Israel, just like every other country on the planet, every country has the right to exist, be its own individual state. And simultaneously, like you just said, like you said, we should just back off their hawkish attitude, and you believe that Israel could also defend itself as well.
Generally speaking, yes. Like I said, I'm not saying we need to pull our presence out of these countries, but I think we need to start taking a little more of a back seat.
I'd say we should keep our presence in those countries only if they want us to be there. But if they say,
exactly.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't think to be honest, this is my opinion, but I think in some of the countries, I don't think we're there because, let's say, they have a choice.
Like Turkey. Why the hell are we allied with Turkey, especially since they've got such a crazy guy like Erdogan running?
I'm still waiting for the Armenian genocide apology.
Oh, the Armenian genocide. That meme never gets old. Oh gosh.
Well, if you think about it, we have relations with Turkey based out of pragmatism, and it's almost like a marriage of convenience. We're not really 100% enemies, but at the same time, we're not 100% friends. So we're just like, okay, we can be friends. Listen, only if you scratch my back, and I'll scratch your back to the best of my ability, and that's pretty much.
Well, I'm thinking we could still be friends and trade partners with them. They just don't have to be our military ally. We can still have convenient deals with them. Like they don't have to be part of NATO. That's what I'm thinking. And also, I don't think they qualify to be part of NATO as well.
Yeah, and the problem with Turkey, the problem with Turkey though is that is that Erdogan has been basically eroding away all things democratic, all things of the people. And he has this like crazy vision where he wants to rebuild the glory of the Ottoman Empire. The large Orthodox Christian population that used to be in Turkey are fleeing. The Jews are fleeing because the whole Turkish experiment has basically failed. Turkey was supposed to be this like half secular, half religious government that sort of bridged the gap between Europe and like the Middle East, and it's radicalizing. Like you want radical Islamic terror.
Yeah.
Erdogan's been threatening the EU with like, hey, we'll flood Europe with even more immigrants if you don't give us if you don't give us X amount of money every year, and not only that, but you better start seriously considering our application for membership to the EU. So Turkey's been dick wagging a lot in recent years, and it really worries me. Why the hell we had any sort of friendly relationship with Turkey and are not calling them out on their shit, especially when they like come to our soil and disrespect our politicians. Like you heard the stories about that, right? How about like the Turkish like Secret Service was like abusing our guys?
I did not hear about that. No.
It was kind of a kerfuffle. But anyway, sort of point being, yeah, like I do definitely think that conservatism needs to start leaning in the paleo-conservative direction, and we need to not be afraid to get our hands dirty if necessary.
So here's my vision of the new right. The new right should compromise. It should not comprise. Let me rephrase it. It should comprise of the best of all non-liberal ideologies, such as paleoconservatism. When it comes to the culture war, when it comes to economics, we could, borrow a lot from libertarianism on property rights, economics, and as far as foreign policy, we should take a more paleo and libertarian stance on foreign policy. That we should put America first, while respecting other sovereign countries as fellow nationalists. So I am of the opinion that you respect with us 100%, we'll respect you back 100%. So that means we'll leave you alone as long as you leave me alone and threaten us. We will have the right to go through Congress and declare war. But war should be the last resort. We should do our very best to stay away from war. So the new right is basically a conglomeration of all non-liberals except neoconservatism, because I don't consider them as conservative, and join together to fight against the left. That is, I think, should be the new movement.
Well, I'd say there's one problem with the new right, though. Like, for example, the recent Syria situation, right? I noticed there was like a split within the new right as well. Like, you have the guys who said that Assad didn't do it. You have the guys who continue to support this neocon John Bolton style idea.
As far as I'm concerned, especially with the whole knowledge of the white helmets, this was another fake ass false flag attack. Like I honestly do not see. I don't know how at this point people don't know about the white helmets and how compromised they are.
Yeah, well, the thing is, but unfortunately, a lot of, let's say, new right guys, some of them actually believe the official story.
Like I go back to John Cardillo. I was really upset that he was towing what I can only assume was towing the line for Ezra Levant, because how extremely defensive he is as a Jewish person of Israel.
Yeah. Well, like, the thing is, I'm saying, like, so the new right could be more united if we had more of a, I guess, common ground in foreign policy. That's what I think.
Yeah, and it really pisses me off that the whole unite the right thing turned out to be the shit show that it was, because I honestly do think that, yeah, we do need to build our alliance among the disparate factions of the right. And I honestly think we could even get a lot of center leftists aboard, your Sargon-type liberals, because even though we don't all agree on everything, I think we agree on enough that we could band together and just start annihilating social justice from our institutions. The problem is any call from now for the rest of eternity to unite the right, as in the not far left, is going to be met with, oh, it's a rallying cry for Nazis. Never mind the fact that Nazis are not even right wing, they're fascists, which means that they're therefore socialists.
Oh, it's my Robert.
I do agree with you that we could also attract open-minded classical liberals such as Sargon and Akkad, and I consider Dave Rubin to be more of a classical liberal type of guy. So
yeah, he is. He describes himself as a classical liberal.
So we would reach out to them and say, and be honest with them and realize that, hey, we're not going to agree with each other 100%. Having said that, we should focus on issues that we do agree on, and that is to go after the social justice warriors and the globalists who want to take away our freedom of speech, and also for those who want to manufactured crisis in other parts of the world. So as far as foreign policy, civil liberties, and freedom of speech and all that, we got a lot in common if you dig enough. And yeah, I think it's possible. So what do you think, Mark?
Well, again, I just like when you said social justice warriors, yeah, we all agree on that, and then we'll like domestic policies, we probably agree on everything. Probably built the wall, right? Like no one on the new right is probably against that. But again, I
think that the new right is heavily defined by our rejection of mass immigration. Like we reject the hyper neoliberal economic idea that that which costs us the least money must somehow be the best. I mean, if you look at what saves the most dollars, yeah, you would hire nothing but like illegal immigrants or cheap foreign labor. But the problem I have with neoconservatives or just neoliberals in general is they seem to forget that culture is a thing. And that even if we have to pay for like more expensive coffee or more expensive fast food or whatever, we're preserving our culture by keeping jobs within our own borders. And that there is value in, the whole made in America idea.
Hey, Peter, let's talk about immigration. This is a very important topic that everybody's been talking about, especially since 2016. What do you foresee happening throughout this year and well into 2019? Do you feel that the border wall will eventually get built?
Yeah, I very much do, because I mean, first of all, they already went and started building prototypes, testing them, et cetera. And so far, we've had the first piece of funding allocated for starting the border wall, and we already have border walls along different parts of the border. I'm from El Paso, so I live by a good section of the border wall. I definitely think we could use some renovation, but no, I do think it's going to begin to go through. Especially as more and more people are beginning to turn against globalism and multiculturalism. So it's not going to be overnight. It's definitely going to be more of a slow thing, but I am optimistic. Like I find Ann Coulter a bit obnoxious on Twitter saying, "Oh, why are you taking so long on the wall?" And I'm like, dude, it's gonna happen. Chill your ovaries, seriously.
Like how long do you think it's gonna?
Peter, I just want to say I love Ann's passion, and she's been railing on this issue well before we're in elementary school. She's been around for a long time, so that tells you a lot about her. But I do agree with you that things are coming our way, and it's not overnight. So my question to you is, how do we go about accelerating and resolving this issue in the next couple of years? What does it take for the new right to win at the ballot box?
I think what's really helping is all the leaks that are coming out of out of the DNC or out of Think Progress or something. Like you heard that leaked memo, right? Where it's like Think Progress or something. They outright said that in order for the Democrat Party to succeed in the upcoming decades, they're going to have to replace us Americans with illegals, because even minorities are beginning to slowly turn against the Democrats.
I've noticed that. Look at social media. It's a great testament that more and more minorities are starting to think independently because of alternative media.
Now the question is it enough though? I mean, are we ourselves as right wingers doing enough? Because here's the thing, because like you said, the wall will be built, but the question is how soon will it be built? Because demographics also mean a lot when it comes to the voting booths, for example, when it comes to propaganda.
Yes, it very much does.
So the problem is that we could try to be civil, and we could try to convince people through social media. But the question is, how long can we be civil about this? And my concern is, are we losing? Stefano Molyneux had a great quote for conservatives. He told, it's a video, I forgot which video it was, but Stefano Molyneux said this: "Stop losing by the rules." he said like
exactly. He's had a couple of videos on this. He's actually had a couple of videos on this.
Yeah. So my question is, so maybe the right needs to become more radicalized. I'd say in a sense that, because here's the thing, we're trying to win this culture war. I mean, I say we had a temporary victory, right? But I'd say with the amount of illegals that are still coming in, and with the Democrats, trying to resist all these bills, whatever, or the Democrats trying to introduce sanctuary bills in California, for example, right? And the wall is still not built yet, and we're still getting all these hordes coming in. Now the question is, like, will they be able to, like, what are we going to do to win the culture war? Should we become more radicalized?
In the sense of being very much against mass immigration and illegal immigration, yes, I think that we need to stop cowering on the immigration issue. Like, we need to be dead honest with ourselves. Razorfist put out a really good video on why we need the wall. As someone who he himself did grow up in Mexico, I didn't know that originally. The problem is that Mexico will never fix itself so long as it has a porous northern border. And what I mean when I say that is that, and I have family in Mexico, so I've heard the stories. I've heard the horror stories. The only reason my family in Chihuahua even have jobs is because they're state of Chihuahua government jobs, and pensions and so forth. So that's the only reason why they can even still work. But the middle class is evaporating in Mexico, as decent people are either being fired or just fleeing because they're tired of everything, every politician, every businessman having a gun to their back from some oligarch or drug kingpin. Unfortunately, the most humanitarian thing we can do is shut our borders tight so that Mexican citizens have no choice but to fight back. If you think about it, the fact that our border has so many holes in it is basically, metaphorically, a political pressure release valve. Every time tensions rise high, they just run north to America and boom, revolution averted. No one to fight it. And if you think about it, most of the illegal immigrants we see are not the poorest of the poor. They're the people who can afford the $7,000 to get smuggled. Whereas the poorest of the poor in Mexico have no choice but to stay there, and they'll either get slaughtered or live in shanty towns for the rest of their damn lives. So I'm very glad that Trump has been pressing hard on this immigration issue and bringing it back to the conversation table. I really think it's a very good thing, and I'm glad that the new right is following suit. And I would even go a step farther, and this is something that I mentioned when we were talking in the lobby of the Phoenix Grand Resort and Spa.
Yes.
As someone who lives on the border, I've lived around Mexican culture my entire life. I've lived next to it and among it. I can tell you right here and now, until social justice and cultural Marxism are destroyed, I'm of the belief that America needs to stay majority white, unless, lest we want the Turner Diaries to become less of a dystopian future novel and more like an instruction manual for minorities. I mean, are you two familiar with the Turner Diaries?
I never read them, but I heard a lot about them. So
I've heard about it. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, I first heard about it from Naked Ape, and he's alluded to them a lot. It's basically this dystopian future series of novels. It was eventually compiled into a book by white nationalist William Luther Pierce. It was of a future where blacks, Jews, and other racial minorities become the majority of America. And they use a campaign of anti-racism to basically make it so that blacks and Jews can do no wrong. And they harass and murder and, whatever to white people, commit crime against white people with total impunity. And ultimately what it leads to is a white supremacist underground gang who eventually fight back and take over the government again. It's basically it's a white nationalist and neo-Nazis' worst nightmare of what happens if and when whites become a minority in traditionally white countries, be it Europe or America. America, I don't think we're nearly as much at risk as, say, countries like Sweden, which is looking to be like a third world nation by 2050 if they don't cut their shit. And I hate to say it.
I'm going to Sweden next month, so I will see firsthand what the country will look like.
Sorry, say again?
I'm going to Sweden, so I will see what the country looks like firsthand.
Ooh.
So
don't go into the no-go zones.
Yeah, stay the hell out of Malmo. Stay out of Malmo. That's like the worst of it.
I'm not. So cutting immigration and putting the wall significantly reduce the likelihood of a demographic shift. But I am of the opinion that it doesn't go far enough. It all rests on the American population. If Americans aren't having kids, you can cut immigration all you want, but if Americans aren't producing children, it doesn't really matter because the demographics will continue to change.
Yeah, and Enoch Powell talked about this in his Rivers of Blood speech, which if you two haven't listened to it, look it up on YouTube. It's absolutely...
We're madmen. Madmen.
Yeah, we must be mad, literally mad to be allowing this kind of influence.
I've listened to this many times.
It's absolutely terrifying. But yes, it's as Enoch Powell said, even if we cut down immigration, yes, that would substantially reduce it. But the basic character of the problem would remain fairly unaffected because, you know, generally speaking, non-whites have higher birth rates than whites. Now, you know, opponents of this will say, yeah, but a lot of the Muslims in Europe who are there, their birth rates are beginning to decline to match natural birth rates of white Europeans. I'm like, okay, that is possible. And in America, like I said, we don't have the problem nearly as badly as in Europe. But I mean, and first of all, we don't have an issue with Islam. Our problem is with Mexicans, quite frankly, or just Latin Americans.
Well, and can I give you a different viewpoint? In order for Americans to start dating and start having children, we have to win the culture war. This problem will not be fixed overnight, and I could tell you that up front. It will not happen overnight. It will take. It will take, and if we were to really do this and win the culture war, it would take a generation, approximately 25 years, to really see significant results. And I say that because it stems from the family, and if there is no culture of family where, you know, kids were raised right, and if they were taught by public schools that, you know, multiculturalism is great, they're not going to raise children, if they were to have kids, to be more traditionalist when they get older.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and this is what I'd forgotten to bring up, but I'm glad we came full circle. The reason why I think there's reason to be optimistic is because this is something that Styx just released a video on, I think it was yesterday or today, I forget, where, get this, millennials are beginning to lose faith in the Democrat Party. I mean, the boomers are becoming more conservative as they get older. The Gen Xers are getting a little more conservative too. And boomers are beginning to see the Democrats as unfavorable. Whereas Generation Z, being connected to the internet and starting with the Gamergate movement running till now, they've become very conservative and very traditionalist, especially because Gen Z is looking at us, older generations, and being like, wow, these guys have really wasted their entire lives with drugs, sex, rock and roll, you know, and, you know, they have no jobs, you know, they have no meaningful relationships. Their families fall apart or are barely existent. So yeah, in a sense, you could say it might take a generation, you know, because for one thing, most Gen Zers are not old enough to vote, let alone run for office. When I say Generation Z, I basically mean anyone born between 95 and 2010. I was born in 94, so I'm like the tail end of the millennial generation. But at least as far as voting patterns are concerned, I think we're beginning to see a shift in the cultural zeitgeist. And in about 10 years' time, we may start seeing some traditionalists win offices again, especially when you look at this new movement to split California up into 3 states.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Like when you said 10 years time, I would agree that again, if we had like a wall, I mean, again, like you said, it's going to happen eventually, but I'd say if we had a wall, right. And then maybe we stopped the demographic from Mexico trying to take over. And if we had the wall right there, and then yes, I could say we could still win the culture war. But if immigration is still going to be bad, if there's still going to be hordes coming in, I'd say Gen Z will be outnumbered. or Gen Z won't have power. Because, for example, even because, for example, how many people actually vote in the whole country in general? How many Americans?
Fun fact. I can give you like actual information on that.
Sure, go ahead.
Boomers are pretty active voters. Gen X, on the other hand, barely votes at all. Like, I've actually seen studies on this where a lot of Gen Xers have never voted a day in their lives because they hate both parties, and find no candidates who represent them, who have any chance of winning. Millennials, at least the first half of the millennial generation, is likewise extremely bad at poll turnout. The second half of millennials, yes, are more active, and then Gen Z is very active, at least the ones who actually are old enough to vote. But the cool thing about Trump is that he shifted up the entire voting map. I mean, your old school normie neoconservatives, a lot of them gave up hope in the Republican Party and didn't vote. A lot of ex-Democrats moved over to the Republican Party because they were sick of the same neoconservative drivel coming out of Obama. Libertarians finally saw a candidate who was a little more like them and had a better chance of winning. You even got some progressives and socialists who are under Bernie who support Trump because at the very least he's not a batshit crazy corporatist. It's the whole map has been really tossed up, and it's very hard to say where the culture war is going to go from here. Like, I don't think anyone can pinpoint exactly where it's going to go. I do think that there's reason for optimism, but how it's going to play out from now till then is anybody's guess. And under Trump, we have seen deportations go up, and we have seen illegal immigration itself go down. So even without the wall, even just the psychological effect of knowing that deportations have increased, it's already made a lot of would-be illegal immigrants think twice. I mean, the caravan that just finally showed up at the border between Tijuana and San Diego, it was originally 5,000 people, and now it's down to maybe 100 or 200. All Trump had to do was say, "Hey, I'm going to send the National Guard down there." I mean, it's kind of similar to what President Eisenhower did in the 50s with illegal immigration, where he basically it was called Operation Wetback, and what he did was targeted deportations. Deport a few people, publicize it, make a big stink about it. And largely, many illegal immigrants already in America went back to Mexico on their own volition. Not everything has to be necessarily active, which is why I'm a big proponent of open carry with guns, because a gun can be used passively. You can never take it off your belt and just have it sitting there, and that already creates a psychological environment where would-be criminals think twice.
Yeah, that's why sometimes I actually do open carry sometimes, because I know that a lot of criminals, or like you said, a would-be criminal, if he sees my gun, oh no, I don't want to rob this guy. Yeah.
So, not everything has to be necessarily active, and I think that's a thing that the new right needs to break the mindset of, break the conditioning, as it were, is that not everything has to be active. There can be things that are symbolic that work more passively and don't require us lifting a finger or spending a federal dollar to actually do. Like, you manipulate people's emotions and make them act on their own accord to do something.
I'll be right back, guys. Just 1 second.
All right, go on ahead. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And I know it's really controversial. I get called a race traitor plenty for saying that I think America needs to stay majority white until minorities can learn to behave themselves. But even
it is I would say it's a very controversial statement, and I understand where many white Americans came from. I guess in a way, look at California. I guess before you were born, California was majority white, and when all of a sudden, because of open borders and the low fertility rate of European Americans, and also whites left the state in massive numbers since the 60s. California is now non-majority white, non-white majority, and and it begs the question: whose fault is it? Is it the individuals of the white communities that have voted to become a minority, or is it a combination of so many factors? Whether if it's low fertility rate, women do not want to have kids with the man, or the man decided to, let's say, become emasculated and decide to grovel just to make sure he doesn't get called a racist the next time. So what are your thoughts?
From my perspective, my mom grew up in Los Angeles, and she's told me stories about how nice and decent Los Angeles was for a long time. She was born in like the late 60s or the mid 60s. So, she saw some of this transformation with her own eyes, that as a lot of the racial minorities moved in, especially the Mexicans, some of the Vietnamese, some of the Koreans, some of the South Americans, and then some parts of the Chinese, not so much Japanese. But yeah, she saw the Puerto Ricans, especially some Filipinos, where a lot of them came here because they felt incentivized by the welfare state that was, big even back then in California. And they had no love for American culture or Californian culture. They had no love for the flag, no love for the history, but they sure as hell love those benefits. And she describes them as simply leeches, and every time we go on vacation to California and, go through Los Angeles, she's like, wow, man, this place is completely deteriorated from what my former home used to be. And
California has a point of no return. Peter, California is at a point of no return. And that's why it kind of baffles me that there are still some people that still believe that California can be saved. I'm sorry to say this, but California is officially finished.
I think that California, is very much dead, and which is why I'm very supportive of the venture to split California up into 3 states, which actually got.
I hear you. I agree. In principle, I agree with you. But the problem with splitting up into 3 states, what happens if all 3 of these newly formed states, if that ever happens, becomes just like today's California? Then you're basically defeating the purpose. Because
I don't claim to know where politically these new segments of California would actually go. I don't claim to know what that is.
Look, California, South California, or Southern California, as natives call it, it's much more conservative, historically speaking, than Northern California. And this
really
California, which constitutes LA, is the blue coast. It's blue all the way. Northern California, it has pockets north of San Francisco where it's really conservative. That's not going to stay that way forever, because a lot of conservatives are even moving out of rural areas because jobs are plentiful, and they would rather just find an area where housing is cheaper and the quality of life is much better. So even if we split the state into 3 pieces, it's not going to solve anything. You're basically cutting cancer, but cancer will start to grow again. So that's why it doesn't make sense to split up California into 3 pieces. You might as well just let it rot. Really, just let California rot, and maybe Californians will wake up at some. But I don't know. The best thing the country can do right now is look at California and say, you know what? I don't want my state to look like California in 10 to 20 or 30 years. So having said that, let's reunite all conservatives and non-liberals who truly care about civilization, stop with the drama, focus on resolving these issues, whether at the voting booth or at institutions, media, and really wake up the country.
how long will following the rules bring back our country back to normalcy? Like how long, like when we start doing all these proposed ideas, how long will it take to bring back our whole country together back to a normal state, back to the state that the founding fathers wanted? Like, I mean, will it take 40 years, 50 years, or will it take 10 years?
That's kind of a difficult question to answer, to be honest, because on the one hand, yeah, there's a lot of reason to be optimistic, and as what really helps is that institutions that people thought were too big to fail, like big media and Hollywood, are beginning to tank, and it's a good thing that that's happening, especially once you introduce blockchain to a lot of the alt tech sites. We've been seeing like Gab and Minds and whatnot, so that they're uncensorable and people are able to harvest to mine crypto and so forth. So I do think that there is still reason to be optimistic. But as for how long it's going to take before we finally get back to what, you could argue the founding fathers wanted, that's a much more difficult question. I do think progress is being made. And yes, I hate the hyper-partisanship that sort of developed in the anti-SJW community. And it's kind of crazy how both Oozaloo and Teal Deer kind of predicted this, that after the election of Donald Trump and after the Brexit vote, people would begin to splinter along ideological lines. And that really bothers me because it's like, dude, we can worry about what comes next after social justice is defeated. Can we just focus on defeating social justice? Like the alt-right is not taking over conservatism. Like it has legitimate concerns, but its solutions are utter horseshit, which is why I'm sympathetic to the alt-right more than most people, in fact. And it's why I like Jared Taylor as much as I do, because even though he himself is not alt-right, he does associate with them a lot, and they do use his writing and his literature from like the 80s and 90s. Like he was sort of like the great grandfather of a lot of the alt-right, to be honest.
But it's why Jared Taylor. Oh my goodness, this might be blacklisted by conservative things. Oh my goodness.
Sorry, Michael, mute yourself. Or hold on, give me a sec.
Okay.
Sorry, continue, man. Robert.
I had to step out a little bit, but you guys were touching on the history of the alt-right. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. No, I was just saying that the alt-right is not taking over conservatism, and I think I think that the fears of that happening are absolutely paranoid. But that being said, I do think the alt-right have almost entirely legitimate concerns. Like I can't think of a single concern the alt-right has that isn't completely legitimate. Unfortunately, the solutions are really horseshit, which sucks because I'm actually extremely sympathetic to them and their concerns, which is why I've grown to like Jared Taylor. I mean, I'm not an expert, I'm not an aficionado, but if you think about it, Jared Taylor is only sort of tangentially affiliated with the alt-right in the sense of white advocacy. He's not a white nationalist, he's not a white supremacist, he's just, white advocate. And he's been one since like the 80s. And he's a very respectful, respectable, well-spoken guy who, for one thing, he doesn't believe in the Jewish question, and he's had to openly rebuke like David Duke for bringing up the Jewish question at all.
Not like David Duke. That guy is really something else, and I totally disavow his style of politics. And look at what he has done. Look at what David Duke has done. He has done nothing valuable to conservatism and saving Western civilization. All he does is he has really effectively become a useful idiot to the globalists and the far left who wanted.
He's kind of the perfect scapegoat if you think about it. If people want to point to, exactly. If you want to point to like anti-Semites or racists or something, it's like, oh yeah, look at this guy, former Klansman.
He's not one of us. He is definitely not one of us.
No, definitely not. And it really bothers me that people associate Jared Taylor with the alt-right just because he's, been a part of, some of their conferences or some of their speeches. He's and it's funny because like, he he even said that like it serves white people no purpose to blame all of their problems on the Jews. And don't get me wrong, reading into it, I think the Jewish question may have a little more fact to it than most people are willing to admit. But to blame everyone's problems on the Jews is absolutely idiotic. So it really bothers me that the more reasonable voices like Jared Taylor aren't listened to, and that their name is sort of tainted by like your Richard Spencers of the world who want to do a sort of pan-European thing. I'm like, good luck, Spencer. Good luck uniting Europe under any banner.
No, look, I want Europe. I wish Europe all the best. But what we could do as individuals is to really, what's happening here at home. We got a lot of mess that needs to be cleaned up, and that's why the new right should own critical issues that is greatly affecting our country, and that includes immigration, multiculturalism, feminism, and also, just defeating against the social justice warrior left at college campuses. So there's so many things we could really solve, and that's why this pan-European thing, that sounds like a pipe dream. I mean, if nationalists in other European countries are willing to cooperate with us and to work with us on areas that we could handle, by all means, yeah, we'll entertain such ideas. But until then, we got to clean up our own mess here at home first. Don't worry about.
Speaking of you mentioned nationalists in Europe. Well, to be honest, a lot of nationalists in Europe, they are really, really like far right. Just saying. So it's like
when you say far right, tell me you're not including fascists in that, because I'm sorry.
No. I'm not including fascists and everything. I'm just saying, like, basically, you could say they're not fascists, but like they're, how do you say it? Like they're in between. Like they're not.
A lot of them are monarchists.
Yeah. Well, you can say monarchist, yeah, like monarchy, like that one, like that one's okay, but then there's other groups. I forgot which one it is. I think it's
you're thinking about a lot of third position, and I say that they don't belong to the left or the right. Like I'm talking third position politics, like fascists, like Spanish phalangists, like syndicalists, monarchists. And get this, the alt-right even has neo-Bolsheviks, like Nazi-Bols, National Bolsheviks. And I'm like, is the alt-right really a right-wing movement, or is it like
I would say monarchism would be good for certain European countries, because, for example, if you noticed, my screen name is alt-monarchist, right? And again, like I'm a Russian immigrant to the United States, and I tell people that if I lived in Russia, if I was over there, I would probably join the monarchist movement, to be honest.
Makes sense.
But like, to be honest, I mean, if you study Russian history, and if you look at Russian history from 1917 up to like right now, up to 2018, monarchy was the best for Russia. Just saying. It had capitalism. Probably. It had foreign businesses and all that stuff. There are so many things that were destroyed by the Bolsheviks, by the communists, by the left wing, that Russians lost, and it was basically monarchy that actually was the best form of government for Russia at the time.
Is it fair to call Russia fascist now, because they still hold on to a lot of state socialism, and they've become very much. To
be honest, Russia's just a weird mess. Like when it comes to what's strange about Russia is there is no actual pure political spectrum. But yeah, there are parties that could be labeled right wing. There are parties that could be labeled left wing. But to be honest, like I would say, like currently in the Russian government, the only parties that are in charge, like in the Duma, or the Russian parliament as we know it, you could say right now there are centrists and left wingers. So like there is like no true rights in the Russian government right now.
That makes sense. I mean, for example, you have like a Nazi-Bol party, which is interesting, wanting to return to communism, but at the same time being very nationalistic and isolationist. I mean, National Bolshevism is kind of a weird position in and of itself.
The National Bolshevik Party, they don't have any government positions on a federal level. I don't know about the local and state levels in Russia, but on a federal level, they don't have any power, the National Bolsheviks.
No, I know. I'm just saying that it's kind of interesting that they're a force at all.
Yeah. Now the Communist Party, they do the CPRF. They're like in third place on a federal level, so or like on a national level, I guess you could say. Yeah. Well, yeah, but Russia, like it's weird to say like there is no pure political spectrum. Like there is a spectrum, but it's not pure because, to be honest, ironically, it's very ironic. The Communist Party, which is known to be a left-wing party, they have left-wing views. The Russian Communist Party adopted certain right-wing ideology, or I guess traditionalist ideology, like a straight marriage.
I think I just dropped the other two guests by accident. Let me hold on. What happened?
What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. We just dropped Matt.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah,
hey,
I
can
don't.
you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
What
know.
happens? What happens?
I do not know what happened. It just randomly dropped you two.
Yeah, it did. So
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah.
That is
Yeah,
kind
so
of
basically,
interesting. That is kind of
like-
interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird that the Russian Communist Party adopted like a few, I guess you could say, right-wing ideologies, like a traditional marriage, like straight marriage, basically, and they allow Christians to be part of the party. Because before Gorbachev, it was basically like to join the Communist Party, you had to announce to everyone that you're an atheist. If you're not an atheist, you cannot join the party. But then like later after Gorbachev, like things changed, and so like it's kind of mixed. So I said like there is like no pure political spectrum. There is, but there isn't in Russia. And so like I would not call it a fascist state because again like it's kind of mixed. So yeah, but the guys in power are either centrists or leftists. Right wing parties, I think they barely hold maybe some city council positions, probably, maybe. That's it.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say that it's. I wonder if it's not. You couldn't technically call Russia fascist because what fascism basically is state socialism. So there's a lot of nationalized industries, universal health care, that kind of stuff, but very socially traditionalist and they don't believe in like full on communism or like zero private property, and they're very nationalistic.
Yeah, well, Russia, like, they don't really have the pure, I say, universal healthcare either, because, for example, a lot of, back in the Soviet Union, everything was free. Like, basically, you don't pay for anything, right? Right now, basically, like a doctor's visit, yeah, you're not charged for a doctor's visit, but you'll be charged, for lab works, something like that, or you will get charged for, let's say you need to do an operation, so you still got to pay for that. But the only difference is that it's cheaper, it's more affordable than, let's say, here in the United States. So yeah, but like now then the question is the quality good? That is another question.
That's always the problem with socialized healthcare is does the cheap cost or no cost really justify the or is it really made up for by the quality? It's one of those things where I don't think universal healthcare will ever work in the United States because frankly our population is way too big and way too heterogeneous for it to ever work. Europe, it makes sense that they could work. I mean, for one thing, countries like Finland and Norway who can keep it running because of their oil money, and they're like what, a 60th the size of the US and pretty much a monoculture, almost ethno state where everyone's kind of on the same page. The US, I really don't think universal healthcare will ever work here.
And another thing to note that we have a burgeoning welfare state that's too big to handle, and I'm surprised we still have a welfare state that's still running. Another thing is our population is, like you mentioned, is too big, and right now, the last time I checked, the U.S. population is around 328 million and growing due to immigration, and I don't think universal health care is the answer. But then again, what we should try a market-based healthcare system where companies can compete for better quality service, and I feel that's the best approach in a country like the U.S.
Well, another thing is, I think another problem is that we are way too expensive too. That is why a lot of people go out of the country, like to pay for whatever health services they need. For example, like I said, going back to Russia again, right? For example, like a lot of fellow Russian Americans, like sometimes when they're feeling sick, right? They leave the country, go back to the motherland, and go to the doctor over there, pay the doctors over there because like the same process will be a lot cheaper than it will be over here. So I'm thinking we need to solve like a problem here too for people who don't have insurance. We need to make it more affordable as well. Like I say, basically, because you go to a doctor right now, you go to an emergency room right now, and you'd be surprised how much they'll charge a person for being admitted to a hospital for a week. Like 20 grand, for example, right? And that's if a person doesn't have insurance. How are they supposed to pay that off?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I honestly don't think, yeah, like you said, I don't think a lot of the America's welfare state's very tenable anymore. And I really look forward to the day when a lot of it just comes crashing down and burning and forces people to have to freaking get their own damn jobs. Or for that matter, something I never hear leftists talk about, and really bothers me about their views on charity. It's like, oh, nobody would ever donate that much. Dude, do you know who the most charitable people on planet Earth today are? They're wealthy religious conservatives who, by the way, also adopt the most children. So there's a stake in the heart of a lot of abortion arguments. We adopt the most. We give the most to charity in addition to tithing. That's outside of tithing. The stingiest people on earth are wealthy secular leftists. But fun fact, wealthy secular conservatives are the second stingiest people on earth, which means that wealthy religious leftists are actually more generous than atheist conservatives.
So are you saying that basically religious people are more generous than the atheists who claim to be morally right?
Statistically, they are significantly more generous than atheists. And before welfare states even existed, go back to Israel, go back to the days of the early church. Before welfare even existed, people pooled their money together all the time to help share each other's limited medical bills. And there are private sector solutions to that, like MediShare, where you literally pay, you pay what you can and you share each other's medical expenses. MediShare, go look it up. I don't see why leftists obsess over government solutions to everything. There's always a private sector alternative that's better.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, again, it's just ironic that, I keep hearing a lot from leftist atheists that, religious people are a bunch of, bad people, we're none but, evil people that don't want any good for anybody. But then, then they criticize churches. Like, for example, you see those Facebook posts or these memes on Facebook where they'll have some big building and they'll say, well, see how much it costs to build this building. How come they don't donate this money to charity or something like that, right? But then you basically show, well, statistically speaking, religious people are the most charitable people ever out there. So, I mean, it's like, I guess it's a major contradiction, like that a lot of liberal left-wing atheists don't notice about themselves. They like to talk a lot, but they themselves don't walk the walk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's a problem I've noticed with even Sargon, where he's talked about that he's more than content of there being a lot of welfare programs in Great Britain, and that his taxpayer dollars go towards that because that way he can say, oh, well, quit bothering me about charity. I pay taxes, and I definitely see that as very much a character flaw in a lot of social liberals who they say, oh, well, I'll just pay more taxes because that means I don't have to give to charity. I'm like, I don't know if it's necessarily something to be proud of. I think that's like a character flaw that you don't want to give to specific charities or specific instances. I don't know.
So this is the question: are we the most charitable country in the world, or what are your thoughts on this?
I know for a fact our charity is a much more booming industry in America than it is in Europe. I do know that for a fact because Europe is extremely atheistic and people are very stingy there statistically.
Yeah. Well, the solution to healthcare costs is enabling and encouraging people to give charity, and that's why you look at websites such as GoFundMe.com, and I'm pretty sure there's a host of other apps and websites where you could donate just by one click, and you just help someone, permanently.
Yeah. Well, there's so many solutions. We've got Kickstarter, like you said, GoFundMe. So yeah, there's always a way.
Yeah, what really bothers me too is that, leftists don't put their money where their mouth is. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, all of us have at least run into one communist or another. How many of you have ever known any poor communists ever? How many of them have not been rich white twats?
I haven't met a communist personally. I've met one, but he didn't look that poor. I mean, he kind of was well fed, but if he actually lived in a third world communist country, I can imagine he wouldn't be carrying his iPhone X and dressing well and eating food that will keep you through the day.
Yeah, it's funny too because Isaac, he's been through university. He's been in the English department for most of his time in college, and he runs into these crazy Marxists. I mean, and he even knew some growing up. I mean, he's told me stories about he's never met a single poor communist, and if anything, modern communists seem to talk a lot of shit towards poor working class people. I mean, if you look at it, that's what neo-Marxism basically is.
Yeah.
It's become the very thing it claims to be against, which is
Karl Marx. Karl Marx, basically he lived off other people. He never really worked. I mean, he did have a job temporarily. To be fair, he did work at some kind of newspaper. But then, other than that, after he got fired, he mooched off his parents, and then he also mooched off of other people. And for example, he never has been around workers himself. And if he ever met intellectual working class people, like actual workers who are both workers and intellectuals, he feel emotionally, mentally threatened by them because, they proved a lot of his theories wrong, and so he'd always have the short temper. He'd actually kick them out and be like, "Hey, you guys are too smart for me. Get out of here," or something like that. So this idea that basically Karl Marx himself was a elitist a-hole who never really cared about the working class at all. And when you look at, like you just said, you asked a good question. Like, have you really seen a poor communist? I mean, other than maybe a communist country, but I mean, here in America, personally, yeah. I met a few, but usually, it's some rich white kid that's a communist.
Yeah, the only kind of commie I've ever met has always been like an upper middle class or an upper class college kid. So this whole thing where it's like it's the people's politics or something, it's like that's retarded. If you ask a poor person, hey, would you be willing to up your taxes in order to have a more equitable life in comparison to your neighbors? Like, fuck no. Like, I work hard for that shit. I don't want to give that up. Even if it's a mound of dirt, like it's their mound of dirt. Yeah, and I really I love that dig. The only poor communist you'll ever find is in a communist country. Robert, are you there?
Yeah, I'm listening. I just wanted to know more from your perspectives on your thoughts on these issues, including the one that we're talking about. Yeah, let's switch to another topic that is relevant to what's going on right now. Do you feel that the situation in North Korea could pave the way for the major 2018 and 2020 elections?
I mean, if it looks good for press right now, and it looks really good for Trump that this is happening. Yeah, I think it's good for re-election. I just don't know what the actual payoff is going to be. Like, what is the effective result going to be in these talks? Because the Kim Jong Un or the dynasty has done this shit time and time again.
Well, here's another question. Even like, let's say everything's fine with North and South Korea, everything goes smoothly, right? For example, like most people, again, majority of people who vote, like they really don't even pay attention to what's going on in foreign policy. So the question is, will it really affect Trump's reelection? Like, will it be a major impact? Because again, like you could try to explain to a liberal, hey, Trump actually brought peace to both North and South Korea, and it will just kind of go over their head. They may not even care about that issue. So will it really matter in the election? It may or may not, technically. So, I mean, yeah.
If peace were to take place, true peace were to take place in the Korean Peninsula, it will affect the economy of the U.S. We do trade heavily with China, Japan, and South Korea, and across the Pacific Rim countries. So having peace brings stability, and when there's stability, there prosperity follows, and that's why for the private sector, having peace is good. For defense contracting companies, that's a different story. So,
yeah. Well, the thing is, you have to look at it domestically as well.
More businesses in that part of the world, you want peace, you want stability in order for the economy, including our own country, to grow. So it depends. Like if you're a neocon who writes for the Weekly Standard or work for the, pro-war think tanks in Washington, D.C., yeah, you're not going to be a happy camper. But do we care about them? No. We care about what's best in terms of promoting peace and freedom, not only in this country, but with other countries. And that can be accomplished through diplomacy, not beating the war drums. Because, look, the last thing we want is to shed any more blood, including our own American men and women overseas. That's the last thing we need to do, we want to see. So I think if Trump manages to, hold these two Koreas together and see some really good results, even if it's a slightly better result, it will help him in the long term as far as his political victory is concerned.
Yeah, Styx has talked about being very optimistic, like that American university professor who came up with like the 13 keys to the White House or something, and all I need are like 7 of them for like election. This would be the 7th key, if it ended up happening. And then you get other political commentators like Razor Fist, for example. He's extremely optimistic about this, that even if, very little gets done in the way of actual long-term peace, I think it's fair to say that Kim Jong-un may very well be the last dictator of North Korea, and that they'll have to start adopting China-style capitalistic bits into their economy.
Now, do you think...
Go ahead.
Yeah, so do you think they'll actually just probably promise Kim Jong-un some kind of little political position, or they just let him kind of retire somewhere in a mansion somewhere in Korea? What do you think?
That's hard to say. I mean, first of all, his health is a little ambiguous. I mean, it's kind of scary that he took a dump in like a little pot, and let nobody examine his fecal matter. I mean, it's already like, you remember that defector guy from North Korea who like they found like this crazy like tapeworm in his dick or something like nobody had ever seen before. It is possible that Kim Jong-un may have health issues. And some of the other factors that Razor brought into the discussion is that Japan just found a bunch of rare earth metals off its coast, which pretty much craters anything that China may have had reason to trade with North Korea over. Not only that, but the North Korean government has actually begun turning a very big blind eye to a huge black market for groceries. And when is a communist government, or just any government whatsoever, turn a blind eye to a black market for something like groceries without wanting to tax the hell out of it? Like, that's significant. There have been a lot of recent developments in North Korea that I think, yeah, there is reason to be optimistic. And it's just another long, slow, drawn-out thing where they'll probably go the same route that China and Vietnam did, which is gradually incorporate more and more capitalism into it.
So do you think both North and South Korea could actually possibly merge pretty soon?
That's
as one country?
That's on the table. I don't know. I don't know what a reunification is possible, let alone imminent.
Well, Robert, what do you think?
Unification may not happen overnight, but eventually it will be at a point where it will be a viable option, because South Korea has a domestic problem, and that is that their population is starting to decline, and they realize, well, what are their options? Either open the borders to non-Koreans, and some are talking about that, or they should focus on reunification, an eventual reunification with North Korea, to where they can replenish their population with new people that speak the same language, have the same background, and they'll be able to supply them with labor. Korean companies are totally for unification. I'm telling you, they want cheap labor coming in from North Korea, because the South Korean population is aging. Their fertility rate is one of the lowest, not only in Asia, but across the globe. And they feel like warming up to North Korea is good for Korean businesses. And that's why they would rather stick to, warming up in between North and South Korea versus, sticking with this old, tired narrative that, let's talk about war. Let's get ready for war. No, that if war were to ever happen, it's going to be a major loss for not just North Korea, but also for South Korea as well, because half of them have families in North Korea. And I think that a war in the Korean Peninsula is not going to be beneficial for future relations between Korea and the United States, because Ron Paul said the word blowback. Don't think for a moment that a potential war in Korea would deliver sympathy for the Korean population. They're going to turn against the U.S.
Yeah, probably they would.
Because think about it, blood is thicker than politics. A lot of the South Koreans do not like the politics of North Korea. They despise Kim Jong-un. But at the end of the day, they would rather not go to war at all and focus on reunification to bring the two peoples together, irrespective of political differences, because they still look at them as brothers and sisters of the same people. And that's why I am of the opinion that a war will not happen unless something drastic, unexpected happens. But at this point, I don't think a war would ever happen. I don't foresee such thing happen. I don't know. But at this point, anything is possible.
Robert, you just mentioned that basically the Koreans see each other as brothers and sisters. Explain that to John Bolton. Explain that to John Bolton, please.
he has no idea what he does not. He is not Korean, first of all. He doesn't have the Korean soul. He doesn't understand how Korean people feel about this geopolitical proper, because all he knows is what he knows from the CIA and other major think tanks that fed him lies based on their narrative. I don't know, maybe he's genuine what he believes, but I genuinely think that what John Bolton wants is he wants to take an uncompromising position of a regime change and turn the rest of Korea into a future vassal state. of Washington. He doesn't want to see progress that goes against his narrative, because the last thing he wants to see is Korea becoming united as a truly sovereign country and become less of a vassal state of Washington. And that's why Bolton, he is really something else in terms of foreign policy. And anybody in the new right should view him with great suspicion. Like, as long as he keeps his mouth shut and go along with the Trump's administration, and I think that's the best deterrence against his actual wishes. Like he's not president. He's not going to force Trump to say, you believe it this way or the highway. Look, for all I know, I really hope Trump could just tell Bolton to either respect me as commander-in-chief or you get the hell out of here. So I don't know. I mean, anything's possible at this point.
Yeah, I kind of feel likewise. It really bothers me that Washington is filled with so many neocons, left over from the Bush and Obama years. But no, it does seem like the party is gradually being whipped into shape to just go with what Trump wants. Gradually, I mean, there's still elements of the neoconservative platform that you can tell are taking much longer to die. But no, like I said, I do think there's reason for optimism, but it's definitely not going to be an overnight sort of thing.
Now, I got a question for you guys. It's about MAGA. So can you still be MAGA and disagree on certain issues with Trump? Like, can you still be pro-Trump and disagree with him on certain issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
The reason why I asked that is because, unfortunately, I also noticed this trend amongst let's say MAGA supporters like us, basically, I said some of my opinions. For example, like the Syria thing, I disagreed with that one, right? All of a sudden, again, and I talked to Robert about this earlier, about how, like, a lot of people, if you disagree a little bit, you're a libtard, you're a left winger. Yeah. I'm like, no. I mean, I just disagree with Syria. I have
a sort of complex view on Syria, in that both times it happened, he struck places that were not of any military significance, and both instances seemed to get someone to the discussion table. Yeah. If you looked at the individual morality of it, that was a total betrayal of his platform. But if you look at what the actual effect was, the first time it happened, the issue was getting China to the discussion table about sanctions on North Korea. Like, he bombed that one random remote little airstrip. No, it's plugged in. He bombed that one little random airstrip in Syria of no military significance the night he was having dinner with President Xi of China. And he said, hey, I think what his ultimate goal was, he used that as dick wagging, basically saying, hey, I'm willing to do this. The second time it happened, he tried to make an even bigger show of it by shooting off more missiles at more locations, again, none of which were of any tactical significance, no casualties whatsoever, to shut up the neocons long enough to let him move in and do his thing. I know the Mafor deep chest memes get really old really fast, but both instances of Syria.
Peter, here's what could happen. I feel that if Trump makes some big headway when it comes to North Korea, and there's a lot of progress being made, the next thing he'll do is he's going to basically come out of the closet and say, I am my own man. I'm not going to get totally involved in Syria. And he's most likely going to make a surprise announcement that we're going to withdraw our troops from Afghanistan, just to piss off the neocons in Washington. And of course, the Democrats. The Democrats will always go after him no matter what. And he could part tomorrow and they'll still say stuff about him. So at this point, he's trying to be candidate Trump again. I hope he'll be candidate Trump.
Yeah. Well, like my whole point, basically about the Syria situation was basically it wasn't the airstrikes, for example. Like my whole point was the whole blaming Assad. That's where I disagreed, and I got labeled a libtard, a left winger immediately by like a lot of these people who claim to be also Trump supporters. And like that's one thing I'm thinking. I try to explain to these people, hey, I still support Trump. You know, I'm still a Trumper. I'm still a MAGA guy, right? But I mean, just that one issue, I just disagree, and all of a sudden, boom! I'm no longer allowed to call myself a MAGA person anymore. You know,
Wow.
and like, and I'm saying that this is an issue I've noticed that's very popular. What?
You gotta make better friends, Peter. I mean, you gotta make better friends. Just ignore these guys.
No, well, it's not just that. It's not just that. No, I mean, it's like basically, it's I noticed a common trend. I mean, it's not just like amongst friends, it's just amongst any type of like conservatives. I mean, it's probably because they're boomers. That might be a reason why they're acting like this. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like basically, I mean, like I tell them, hey guys, I'm still a Trump supporter. I just don't agree with the whole Syria thing. And already that's enough to kind of, hey, you either get in line or you don't. You agree with everything or you don't. You know, that's basically how it is. And I'm saying like, so my question is, that's why I'm like a little worried about the new right. I mean, how much can we unite together though? I mean, if we already have little like differences, but let's say like there's a difference of opinion and we label each other libtard and left winger because of our differences of opinion. Like, how can we then be united then? And again, I'd say like this a problem that like with the new right though is that like because the Syria situation, it kind of shattered the new right in a way that like it's kind of hard, you know, to get along, I guess, on that certain issue.
It definitely placed the new right into a weird situation where, yeah, the big fractured factions became, oh, well, this is a total betrayal of Trump. I'm going to like burn my MAGA hat and I'm off the Trump train, which was absolutely idiotic. Then on the other hand, you got the people who are like, oh, support every single thing Trump does with zero skepticism. Otherwise, you know, you're a cuck. And then you get sort of people like me who are in the middle where I'm just sort of waiting to see what comes of it. And so far, if what I've seen is to be believed, I honestly do think that the Syria moves were purely strategic. I mean, why the hell would he warn the Russians the first time he did it that they were going to do it? Why was he in contact with Assad the second time he did it? I mean, clearly he didn't intend for there to be casualties. And to my knowledge, I think the first time there was like a few civilian casualties or a few military casualties, and that was about it.
Well, from what I heard, it's a way to distract the globalists to kind of make it look like he's giving them what they want, or something like that.
While giving him just enough time to get what he is trying to get done with foreign diplomacy. The first time it was getting China to the table. The second time it was getting North Korea to the table, and those seemed to work real well.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I heard that theory, so like I'm thinking maybe like hopefully that is true. Basically, he just kind of like you said, he bombed some empty airfields just to kind of make it look like he's doing something, just to appease the globalists for now, to distract them, and then like you said, bring diplomacy and everything. So I don't know. Hopefully, it works out.
And if it works out according to plan, he could easily win a lot of decisive, victories in 2018, because he has to make sure that his party maintains the majority in both the House and the Senate. So once he gets enough candidates being elected that goes along with Trump's agenda, then it will make 2020 much more easier for him to get himself elected.
Well, the thing is, and Razor did a video on this, like the day after Kilroy ended, and I swear Razor's gotten really good at predicting politics. I would bet money on pretty much any prediction he makes now in the near future that so long as the Democrat Party keeps getting ever more frothing at the mouth, crazy, like it was leaked that their 2020 platform is going to involve reparations for slavery. I shit you not. It's possible they're going to make that part of their platform, because at this point, what can the Democrats win on? They can't win on money because Trump's cut taxes. Oh, stupid Trump. I'm going to raise your guys' taxes again. Yeah, no, you're not going to do that. Second of all, immigration, which more people than you think are very much for immigration control. And he's had some pretty good support on that. Three, if he really wins with his foreign policy stuff, which he seems to be doing, what the hell do the Democrats have to run on other than, oh, well, I'm not Trump and reparations? What do the Democrats
one of the narratives would be, well, let's go after Putin because Putin is responsible for Trump's victory in 2016.
Yeah, but public support for the Mueller probe has just absolutely plummeted. The House Intelligence Committee finding was just released, saying that there was jack shit. Mueller himself is getting more and more frothing in the mouth, crazy and witch hunting everyone conceivably possible.
Well, speaking of
the Steele dossier is, huh?
Let him get a word.
Sorry.
Well, actually, yeah, like you just mentioned, Steele dossier. Basically, that was all concocted by Fusion GPS. Now, the thing was, originally, here's the story. Basically, the Democrats said, "Oh, there's this company called Fusion GPS. It's a Russian-owned company, and they have this one lawyer that was working with Putin. Oh, sorry, not Putin, but with Trump Jr. and how she got information from him or something like that." And then they blamed Fusion GPS for being this bad Russian company. But then it turns out Fusion GPS is not a Russian-owned company. It's some kind of private company, which is hired by DNC to help work on the Steele dossier, you know? So it basically turned on them. They claimed, DNC told us Fusion GPS is a foreign agent. But then when you start digging, it turns out Fusion GPS works for DNC. They hired them.
The Hillary campaign literally hired them for Oppo research, and that did lead to the Steele dossier, which is why, conflict of interest.
Yeah, and they helped Michael Steele to write the dossier. Michael Steele, I think he wrote part of it, then I think Fusion GPS helped him out with that. But yeah, basically, it's just kind of ironic. And I try to explain this to the liberals. I'm like, hey guys, how is it that the DNC accused Fusion GPS of being a foreign company? But then it turns out Fusion GPS was working for them, for DNC. It doesn't they cannot calculate that in their mind,
Well, dude, even freaking Noam Chomsky himself, the godfather of leftist economics, even he said from the very beginning that this whole Russia investigation was utterly paranoid garbage, like a total waste of time, because there's absolutely no proof for it. And the more rabid they get and the more crazy they get, fewer and fewer people are taking the investigation seriously.
Ironically, for example, it's like you said, fewer people taking it seriously, but I think the ones who are taking it seriously are, I guess, hardcore Democratic voters. Because, for example, it's so bad. I was at a protest a month ago, and basically, it was the March for Lives thing. And so we, the pro-gun people, the Second Amendment folks, we came to counter-protest the March for Our Lives. And so basically one of our guys was making a joke. Basically, some Democrats started to tell us how, Trump is owned by Putin and basically all that stuff. Russian trolls elected Trump. And then one of our guys pointed at me and goes, here's a Russian troll right here. Here's the Russian guy, right? He voted for Trump. And the woman's like, yeah, because Putin gave you the order to vote for Trump. I was like, that's kind of racist, I'm thinking, basically, I'm an immigrant. So first of all, you're making fun of an immigrant. You're telling him that he doesn't have his own mind. He can't think for himself. That he follows orders from Putin. I'm thinking that's kind of messed up. It's like, yeah, but it's just so sad. But it's so sad how Democratic voters actually believe the shit they're saying. Oh, excuse me.
No, it's fine. Swear all you want, dude. I say the word nigger all the time on our videos.
I strongly disagree.
Yeah, I'm surprised it took me this long to say it, just because I'm not PC. No, but even the narrative that Putin would want to control Trump, it's like, what would Putin have to gain from this? Oh yeah, Russian hackers are advocating for the U.S. having laxer gun laws so that everyone's armed to the teeth. And that would make America weaker. Oh yeah, Putin elected a non-globalist so that America could re-strengthen its own sovereignty. Like even the narrative itself makes no damn sense.
Yeah, like basically, like Trump wants to build a wall. Like Putin wants to help Trump make America more secure. You know, better security for America.
More secure, stronger, more cohesive, more economically prosperous. Like, what the hell do they think Putin wants? At this point, Putin is just a buzzword, and
Well, he's
Russia.
more Russia's a scapegoat, basically. That's all it is right now. Like I tell people, Russia is not a scapegoat.
Oh, it's so bad that like at the end of 2016, every European country was blaming the rise of right-wing parties or the outcome of Brexit on Russia. I shit you not. Go watch Sargon's this year.
Oh yeah,
Sargon's this year in Stupid at the end of 2016. At this point, this blaming of Russia is absolutely ridiculous.
well, like again, like a lot of these like right-wing parties. I mean, they have some. Like how do you say it? Like they have like our non-interventionist idea of foreign policy, and I guess the neocons don't like that because neocons, they believe in interventionism and world policing, and so of course Russia hinders that idea, and so these right-wing parties in Europe, they're kind of aligned with Russia, saying that no one should be a policeman of the world. And that's why, it's so easy to just point fingers at right-wing parties and say, oh, you guys are funded by Russia. You guys are all Putin agents. Russia's just a scapegoat for everything that's bad. If someone's a villain, hey, you're probably a Russian spy, aren't you? Like you disagree with my opinion, you're a Russian troll.
I wouldn't be surprised. The next new narrative is the reasons why Korea are together is it was all orchestrated by Russia behind the scenes working with China. And Trump basically gave them the green light to make it happen.
Never mind the fact that North Korea would be completely emasculated by a peace process. And it's like, again, how the hell would this help Russia? Like, the Russian narrative makes no damn sense because everything they accuse, every accomplishment of the Trump administration or every bit on the agenda of the Trump administration, what they act like it would somehow benefit Russia when no, it would only make America and her allies stronger, which makes no damn sense because we're the ones, America, we have Russia by the balls. Mainly due to like sanctions and stuff.
Yeah, well, thing is like last thing, basically another thing was that like for example, when candidate Trump was running, they were afraid of Trump winning because, again, Obama put all the sanctions on Russia. Like a lot of people forget that, like Obama started all these sanctions against Russia, and so basically, the thing was, the neocons were afraid of Trump winning. It's because they're afraid that Trump's going to get rid of the sanctions, and then he's going to basically, close it up to Russia. And the thing is, Trump was right. He said, "Why not? Why not trade with Russia? Why not actually make good deals with Russia?" Like. Because Obama, you basically say that it was basically Obama that destroyed what could have been good relations with Russia and the United States. Because if you go to Russia and ask any person what to think about Obama, they say, "Oh no, we hate this guy. He basically destroyed Russian-American relations." And so, like the neocons, basically, Trump's been trying to play them. He's been trying to kind of like, how do you say it? Like not going to war with Russia, but like also not kind of. Not being cozy with them either, basically, and so, but the neocons, they don't. They're afraid of Trump winning because they're afraid of Trump actually coming up with a good solution where Russia and America could cooperate. That's what they're afraid of.
Yeah, because a lot of these old school neocons seem to think that it's still the Cold War and that Russia is still somehow this all-powerful, malevolent force who's like a threat to democracy. It's like, dude, guys, the Cold War ended like 20 years ago. You really want to inflame tensions to the point where we're at a nuclear standoff with Russia again? Really?
And to be honest, they give Putin too much credit. Even when they talk about his KGB years, you actually follow Putin's life during his life in the KGB. His life's pretty boring, like he's not some kind of James Bond super villain, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, there were those villains, they existed, but Putin, he was not on that level. You know, he had a different job. You know, but I think if Putin was a janitor in the KGB, if he was a simple janitor, the neocons will still use that and be like, yeah, he worked for the KGB, he's evil. You know, like and like, I tell the neocons, well, like you do know that in Russia they don't trust Bush Sr. because he was a CIA director, right? And I tell them, what if Bush Sr. was a janitor in the CIA, and Russians said they don't trust Bush Sr. because he worked for the CIA? How ridiculous would that sound? So I said, now flip it around, as well. So like again, like another problem is that liberals, Democrats, they give Russia way too much credit. Way too much credit. Russia is not technologically advanced to pull off the heist that they accused it of. I say you guys give Russia way too much credit. They're not that advanced. Sorry.
Yeah, Russia, largely from what I've seen, Russian citizens themselves are just trying to keep to themselves. And even the Russian government is really walking on eggshells because they feel threatened by NATO, by this, this ever-growing alliance of countries who they never forgot what happened during the Cold War, and as it is, Russia's already very much backed into a corner, and we can royally screw them as America without having to lift a finger, or arm a weapon because of sanctions and our many.
So I'm saying like they give Russia way too much credit for like all this stuff. I'm thinking no, they're not in that position to do that stuff. It's like basically right now what's convenient for Russia is just trade and economics right now.
And even then, even if Russia was capable of this stuff, again, you have to go back to the legal question: cui bono? Who benefits? Who benefits but America at this point?
Or sometimes who benefits? How do you say it? Or if it's not played the right way, the globalists might benefit the globalists as well. So we have to consider that and take that into consideration. Like, what if the globalists benefit from that as well?
Yeah, it's just idiotic and it's just mindless drivel at this point. So I guess to kind of move on, Kanye West.
Nope.
I'll be honest.
Things. I mean, if you watched part of his sound bites, he's kind of like, oh, he's becoming more woke and said some non-PC words that excite a lot of conservatives, especially the boomer conservatives. They all treated him as if he's a freaking political messiah. I could easily fall into that camp, but the problem with that logic is, what if he decides to change his mind or change his tune the next month or the next year? Then what?
It's just liberty.
I mean, here's my approach. We praise him when he says the right things, and we have the right to stand up to him if he says something contradictory to our values. That's my approach.
Yeah, I guess my general feeling about this is I don't claim to know what his actual political opinions are. Frankly, I don't know if anyone ever will. But
probably not, unless if you're good friends with him.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if this is legit conviction. I don't know if this is him just sort of trying to drum up attention to make himself relevant again, just sort of, shock humor kind of stuff and, just promote himself. But frankly, as far as I'm concerned, I love the damage it's doing to the left and how freaking out they are.
He did.
How much they utterly loathe him right now. And the fact that he's freaking making it obvious that he's reading like Dr. Jordan Peterson and has a signed MAGA hat and all this stuff. Like, again, I don't know how sincere any of this is, but
I think once he realized that he's starting to like this trend, he's going to basically keep on going as long as it helps him as far as making money. I think he's doing this just to make his name back on the spotlight again, because Kanye is not as young as he was. So he's like, in the entertainment world, as you get older, you have to find ways to make your name back in the spotlight. Otherwise, you're just going to become irrelevant in the movie industry.
Unless you're a rock star.
A rock star. Yeah, he wants to maintain his rock star status.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, that's what I've been telling my friends. I tell him he's doing this just for money, And this one guy goes, "Well, don't you realize he's risking a lot by supporting Trump?" I'm like, "No, the guy's a multimillionaire. He's not risking anything. He'll have his money.
His music.
He'll still have his house. He still have his money. He's not going anywhere. And
his house is paid off. Look, he has a paid off house. He doesn't have car payments. He has boatloads of cash, and he still has cash coming in on a daily basis, not on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. So he's not hurting for money.
Yeah, so it's like so he's not taking any risks by supporting Trump. Like you said, Robert, I think he's just trying to stay relevant. That's what he's doing. And again, he's just a celebrity. To be honest, I don't think his opinion really should concern us. But a friend of mine said that, but his influence on our culture is very important. I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna go that guy T route and say that he's trying to scuttle the Black conservative movement from within.
That guy T.
Yeah, that guy T put out again. This is just sort of a little theory of his. He's not committing to it, whole hog. He's just sort of putting it out there. Because that guy T really doesn't like the new right because of how, in his mind, it's basically just another platform for normie conservatives who don't like neocons, but kind of don't take very many substantive positions. And I can kind of
I could see that point, but I think if you and I were to sit down with him in person and say the new right to us is anything but normie conservative, and we give them a list of cogent examples that would prove otherwise, he may just come around and say, maybe you guys are actually right with the true definition of what the new right is.
The problem is that the new right has like 5 different groups trying to vie for what the hell the new right actually is. You got the alt-right, you've got the alt-light, you've got your normie conservatives like Paul Joseph Watson who are, exploiting the fact that it's not neoconservatives. You got tradcons, and then you've got like semi-paleocons or outright paleocons. You got like 5 different groups vying for control of what the hell the new right even is.
Do you consider Lauren Southern to be part of the tradcon movement?
I say she's alt-light.
That's how everyone describes her. I don't follow her material. I don't follow Lauren Southern, so I thought she was a libertarian.
To some degree, she has some libertarian views, but her political journey has, shifted towards the new right. So on issues like immigration, Islam, and the European Union, she is more of a Euro nationalist than a typical normie conservative. If you really take the time to listen to her podcast, watch her videos, and really read up on her thoughts on the issues, she's actually closer to right-wing European nationalism.
Yeah, as from what I understand, I think she's veered a little bit into identitarianism. I mean, she does associate with like Generation Identitaire and Identity Europa and that kind of stuff.
Now, what's your opinion? What's your opinion on Generation Europa for the rights?
I don't know much about European identitarianism, but as far as I know, the European alt-right is a lot more nuanced than the American alt-right, because with the American alt-right, it seems to largely be made up of fascists, whereas the European alt-right seems to be comprised a lot more of monarchists and religious authoritarians because of their actual history. So that
basically we have a lot less baggage than the American so-called identitarian, because the alt-right has a lot of baggage, and their messaging is horrible, just like the normie conservative. And
yes, it's you can basically sum up the American alt-right as the kike and the nigger question. Like, really, what substantive positions
they're just flat out racist. Look, that's the problem. They will never go anywhere because they're flat out racist, and their messaging is horrible because they have not produced any substantive.
Robert,
they're not sending people to Congress.
Robert, can I intervene on that one?
Yeah.
Basically, I think the alt-right itself has their own like factions, I guess. Because have you heard of James Alsop? For example?
Yes, I'm vaguely familiar with him.
Yeah, because James Alsop, and actually, I watched a video of James Alsop. Like, I just want to hear his opinion on some kind of issues, right? And he actually said that he is not a racist. Actually, that is what he said. So I mean, like, I don't think like all alt-righters follow James Alsop.
Well, I'll even go out on a limb, and I'd say watch Roaming Millennials interview with Richard Spencer. For as much of a jackass as you think Richard Spencer is, I don't think you can call Richard Spencer a racist or a white supremacist, because for one thing, he's a race realist, and he said, and when asked the question, "Are you a white supremacist?" he's always like, "Okay, supreme in what sense?" I mean, for one thing, whites are not supreme in strength. That goes to Africans. I mean, go look at running sports Olympics. It's always African athletes who win running sports. It's not intelligence because it's always Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, and East Asians. So say what you want about Richard Spencer. I don't think you can necessarily call him a racist. I think you can just call him a jackass because he's kind of an attention whore who's trying to become like the Milo Yiannopoulos of the alt-right, basically.
Yeah. Now, so do you think he's not on the same level as Jared Taylor, for example?
I actually like how respectable Jared Taylor is, because Jared Taylor is not a racist either, and it really pisses me off that people call him a white supremacist, including his Wikipedia page, which look it up. It's amusing, where it says he denies this title of white supremacist, but he is an American white supremacist anyway. And I'm like, dude, just no, he's a white advocate. Yeah. He's only tangentially related with the alt-right anyway, who they don't listen to him past a certain point because he thinks that the Jewish question is ridiculous. And Jared Taylor is outright against removing people or segregating people. He just believes in freedom of association. You could call Jared Taylor is basically a white identitarian paleoconservative.
So Jared Taylor just doesn't want, let's say, white people to become a minority.
Basically.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what you want. I mean, that's what you want the same thing as Jared Taylor.
Sort of. I don't want to have to care about race, but until minorities can learn to behave themselves, we may have to be honest with ourselves that America and Europe need to stay majority white until cultural Marxism is defeated. Otherwise, democracy cannot and will not survive.
Man, Peter, you're such a white person with brown on the outside. You're basically an honorary white man.
if I was part of the Nazi SS, I'd be considered an honorary Aryan, because believe it or not,
oh my gosh,
there were Jewish Nazis. George Soros was one of them. There were African Nazis. There were Islamic Nazis. There were Hindu Nazis. There were.
Well, have you heard of General Milch? Well, General Milch, his father was a Jew, so that made him a half Jew. So Hitler was told about this. He said, "Hey, Führer, you do realize General Milch is a Jew?" Hitler replies, "I decide who's Jew or not." That was his response to that. So.
Yeah, you could be an honorary Aryan in that sense, and there were lots of brown Nazis. Fun fact, because they saw the Nazis as being their liberators from the tyranny of the British Empire. Like the North Africans loved Hitler; they loved him. But no, I don't say that I think America and Europe should stay majority white because I want to. Like, I don't want to have to. I was born in the 90s. Okay, I didn't give a shit about race. I still try not to care about race, but unfortunately, living down here on the border, I see how Latin Americans have been whipped up into this frenzy to hate all things Western and all things white, quote unquote. And that's beginning to include the concept of representative republic or of our American traditions. They're they're extremely anti-American. And my mom and my grandpa can testify to this, having both lived in California, where they understand the very anti-American sentiment in, oh gosh, did it really just drop, everyone? Oh boy. Hold on. Okay, there you are.
I guess we got disconnected again.
Yeah,
Hangout has some issues going on.
Yeah, it dropped you. I'm still waiting on Mark to come back.
Well, okay.
Yeah,
So,
for
good talk.
Yeah, it is. No, my main problem is just that having lived among these demographics myself, I've seen the very anti-American streak they have and how they look at you as a traitor if. Okay, there's Mark.
Yeah, hey guys, I don't know what happened. It cut me off.
Yeah, it dropped you guys for some reason. I have lived with Hispanics my whole life, and I've seen the anti-American streak they have and how they hate all things white, and that's begun to translate into all things Western. They've drunk the Kool-Aid of colonialism, imperialism, and they see you as, first of all, they treat you like a traitor if you don't speak Spanish. I speak hardly any. I had to learn some in high school. That's how little I actually know.
Well, even if you know Spanish, or speak multiple foreign languages fluently, the fact of the matter is English should be the official language of the United States.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm all for learning foreign languages. I don't mind, but I think the government should not be in the business of forcing the native population to basically accommodate those who refuse to learn the language and respect the majority culture of this country.
Yeah, exactly. I
say accommodations should be made for foreigners. Let's say a foreigner is traveling, he gets hurt, and we have a translator on site. That's it. But if you're someone who's been here for so many years, then there should not be any accommodation for you.
No, exactly. There's people who are third, fourth, fifth generation here who can't speak a lick of English, and it's not limited to the Mexican or just Hispanic communities. It's also a problem in Chinatown, where these people have all moved around each other, and therefore they all speak Chinese to each other, have no incentive to learn English or leave their communities. Identitarianism kind of had no reason to exist until 1965 with the Immigration Reform Act, when we started letting in way too many people all at once and getting way too lax with our southern border. Now we're at a point where white identitarians have a legitimate platform. You could have ignored them in the 50s. You could have ignored the American Nazi Party in the 50s and the early 60s, but now they were kind of right about a lot of their fears and their predictions.
Yeah, and basically, also when minorities, especially Black Lives Matter, when they say kill whitey, dead of cops and everything, it's no wonder why there is an alt-right in the first place. It's it all makes sense now.
Yeah, they basically the alt-right never would have had any influence or significant following had it not been for the absolute crazy identitarianism of the social justice left.
Cultural appropriation. Or by the way, since we're talking about that girl recently, did you guys hear about that? It was yesterday, I believe. About the girl who wore the prom dress. Was she white? Was she a white girl who wore a Chinese dress?
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah. I mean, what's the big deal? It's no one in China got offended. I don't know if a single Chinese American got offended. It's always a white liberal who gets offended.
It doesn't bother me at all. As an Asian American guy, you can wear whatever the heck she wants, and it really doesn't bother me. If she's truly happy, by all means, go right ahead. That's your business.
Yeah, and like and like what was it, Katy Perry or something wore like a kimono or something. And dude, you should have seen Japanese youth who were interviewed about this. They were like, "Oh my gosh, we're glad with this. People showing our culture to the rest of the world. More Americans should do this." It's like every time, it always backfires on the regressive left, because it's like when you go to the actual countries of origin of this stuff, they like it. They see it as a promotion of their stuff.
Oh yeah. And the problem is that even if you explain it that way, and if you show them the interviews of, like you said, those Japanese kids, right? You show that to liberal, they still won't get it for some reason.
They'll call it internalized racism.
Yeah, and ironically, it's usually the white liberal who gets offended. They get offended for someone else.
Truly, the white man's burden never dies, does it? First, the white man had to help those stupid brown people make any sort of living with colonialism. And now the smart, resourceful white people need to start propping up the brown people because they still can't prop themselves up. It's amazing. I know it's kind of a very cuckish thing to say, the Democrats are the real racist, but it's kind of true, to be honest.
The Democratic Party is essentially using minorities as political capital until their usefulness is gone, because the Democratic Party has lost the white working class. So that's why the next best thing for them is to capitalize on minorities. Well, what if minorities all of a sudden start to wake up and say, I don't have to be a Democrat. I could be my own person and support whoever I want to support. So when that happens, and let's hope that happens, the Democratic Party will be further marginalized to the fringes of political society for a very long time. And I hope that happens. And you would think with the rise of alternative media and social media, that is starting to change. So
it's beginning to.
What's that? It's beginning to, and I've noticed that, but is it enough? I don't know, because if you look at history, the internet, including social media, has a short history span of 15 years at most, 15 plus years.
It's a very young thing.
Yes, it is. And this whole Kanye thing, to be fair, I'll give credit where credit is due to Kanye. I mean, the Kanye effect has caused many African American males, and even a little bit more females from the Black community are starting to, start to question the liberal ideology, and they're starting to look at our ideology with an open eye, with open heart and mind. So I feel that things are changing for the better. And I hope I could say the same about the Hispanic communities and others who have seen our views on social media. Anybody with a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop can go to, all the right-wing materials that we've been reading for a long time. There's no law that says minorities shouldn't be exposed to these materials at their own free will. So I think, it's changing. Not everybody started out like this, like what we believed at the beginning. We all came from different political journeys. So I feel that in the past few years, things are changing a lot for the better. I know there are naysayers who, always paint a doom and gloom scenario politically that, nothing will get done. You know what? I don't want to be on your side. Even if you're totally right on what you're saying, I don't want to be with you politically, because
I'm not just gonna lay down and die and let my country die with me.
Exactly. I mean, you have the right to say, you know what? I don't like the way things are going, so I'm going to do something about it. Whether if I'm working behind the scenes, or you're running for office, or you create your own media, or whatever you're good at, you have the right to say, no, this is not normal. I'm going to do something about it, one way or the other. And this is why we're here today, is to make a huge difference and try to make some significant changes. I don't foresee myself running for office. I don't, become the face of conservative media or what have you. I'm just a guy next door who is genuine in what I believe to be right, and I want what's best not only for myself, but I want what's for all people, even those who I don't agree with at all. And this is why more people should be on our side, not less.
Yeah, and especially I do have a lot of hope being the big lawsuits, whatnot over Facebook, over YouTube, over Twitter tanking anyway. It's like I think that the monopoly of Silicon Valley companies is beginning to fracture, and especially once like I said, once more alt tech sites begin incorporating like blockchain and stuff. Like I do think that the left is losing their institutional power. I mean, again, Hollywood, we always thought Hollywood was like too big to fail. Clearly not. It's starting to fail. We always thought that like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube were too big to fail. They're beginning to take some hits, especially not just financially, but legally. So it's a lot of stuff is shifting. The sands are shifting under our feet. And while it is difficult to say where they'll end up, for now, I think there's enough evidence to say that we can at least lean in the optimistic direction.
I'd say for the moment we could, but the question is, how long will this last? Because because the powers that be, let's say the globalists, they're not just going to let this, they're not just going to roll over. And like you said, Hollywood is going down, but then again, is it a temporary setback? Hollywood's going to probably, I don't know, how do you call it? How do you say? Basically, Hollywood might take a little break or something. Then they might come back. Because let's not forget, a lot of these people, a lot of these leftists, they're sponsored by corporate elitists. These are powerful people. These are people with money, bankers. Believe it or not, bankers, international bankers or these major corporate elitists, they're all leftists. They need how do you say it? Monopolies. They don't need a competition. They themselves are rich. They're millionaires. They don't want any more competition themselves. They don't want capitalism. They don't want free markets. They want to have a monopoly on everything, and that is why whenever there's a movement, any kind of left-wing movement, for example, we have here in Arizona a teacher walkout movement, and I know that's from what I heard, it's being sponsored by Hollywood elitists. So I know there's always some kind of elite corporate elitist or some kind of elitist group sponsoring any kind of.
Chances are it's got some George Soros money behind it. Yeah. And the funny thing, the whole George Soros thing is not even a conspiracy. He doesn't even hide it. Yeah. The fact that the Open Society
and George Soros, he's just one person. I mean, there's others. There's other corporations out there that sponsor so many left-wing groups. So the thing is, I think right now, what happened, I think a lot of Americans have become woke. They've become red-pilled to what's going on. But I also think that the corporate elites, they still have the money to continue the fight. And so right now we're kind of enjoying some victory. We're enjoying some of the fruits of this victory. But how long will this last? How long will we become complacent again, for example, with sports, with football? Because the problem with, with the conservatives, I say the problem is that we'll get a victory and we'll relax. Victory and relax. Kind of, let's watch your football, let's eat our burgers. And then all of a sudden you start you look around and your school is teaching left-wing propaganda and all that stuff. And so then the conservatives get back on. They start to fight a bit, then they kind of relax a bit. And
look at even that. There's at this point there's almost no entertainment that hasn't begun turning people off. I see what you're saying. What if we grow complacent again and just start demanding our bread and circuses, as it were. The thing is, everything has gotten politicized. You cannot turn away reliably from anything, and it's beginning to drive people absolutely bonkers. You know, even the NFL, like for piss sake, it's like they have to have this whatever the hell that black anchor guy or contributor is. He always has to bring up racial issues. I mean, and yeah, it's to the point where people are literally burning their merchandise. NFL sales tanked, you know, to the point where they were selling Super Bowl tickets, you know, dirt cheap, which they've like never done ever before. And Vince McMahon announced, like, you know, a few months ago, he's going to relaunch the XFL because now he finally sees his chance, because people are turning off the NFL like en masse, like including, yeah, white working class America, you know, that part of America that's supposed to be like diehard NFL fans. That's what I mean, is that like we're beginning to see that nothing is too big to fail. At this point, like, yeah, Silicon Valley even is beginning to take hits. Silicon Valley is taking hits, entertainment is taking hits, cable news, print media, missing link media like the Young Turks, everything left wing is beginning to take a hit.
The FBI too?
Well, okay. Well, the deep state is kind of a hairy mess of its own, but we'll just say that for the most part, almost everything that's leftist or globalist controlled is beginning to take huge financial and popularity hits.
Well,
yeah,
let's see.
Go ahead, Robert.
I was gonna say, before I lost my train of thought, I'm seeing more and more people looking at other options as far as getting information on social media, online, and I think even some on radio and traditional media are starting to be replaced by those who are really close and aligned with our views. Case in point, Tucker Carlson. Why is his rating so high versus Bill O'Reilly when he held the fort back during his heydays? Because Tucker Carlson is much more independent minded, and he exposed on issues that Bill O'Reilly and other boomer conservative media analysts would never ever dare touch.
I mean, to give credit to like Hannity and O'Reilly, like they were willing to have just about anyone on their show, and they've had some pretty crazy people like Reverend Wright. But yeah, you do have to give it to the fact that Tucker is bringing on a lot more contemporary figures. Like he interviews like Antifa professors. He interviews, Yvette Falarka from BAM. You know, he talks about how. Tucker Carlson is, I think, legit new right, because you remember that one segment he got in real shit for, people started calling him alt-right for. He's talking how he's like, really? Is a nation only made up of ideas and its people are completely interchangeable? And I'm like, dude, Tucker is woke as shit. Honestly, yeah. And I think that does contribute to Tucker's success. And hopefully, with luck, we'll start seeing more new right pundits. Even if sort of traditional media is dying, Tucker might be an example of we may start getting some more new right figures within it. You know, in days of waning relevancy.
So yeah, I've noticed the trend that all of a sudden more and more people on our side are winning the information war. This whole Trump phenomenon is not just at the ballot box, which is obviously our efforts to get more guys in office, but on the other front, we are trying to win the information war, and that is to take over all forms of media, whether it's traditional and the new form of media platform, which would be social media. So I'm beginning to see that things are coming our way. And that's why there's no sense for us to get jealous over who's more popular. At the end of the day, we have to look at the big picture, and that is we want to save Western civilization, and in order to do so, we have to put aside the drama that has caused us to set back. We don't want to be set back. We want to be united. Focus on 75% of what we agree on. Get it done, and then we could really defeat the left very effectively in all fronts. So I look at the big picture instead of worrying about who's better and who's not. At the end of the day, we want to live in an amazing country, not some third world shithole that we're looking at in parts of California. So I am of the opinion that we have to look at the big picture, and that's why it's important for us to remember that.
Yeah, and like I said, I really hate the hyper-partisanship that the anti-SJW community has been facing, where people are fracturing along lines of race realism. Of all things, you're really going to make that your hill to die on. By the way, after that whole race realism shit show, it turned me into a race realist because, frankly, the anti-race realist side was just absolutely embarrassing. And at some point, I started listening more to like Jared Taylor or like Stefan Molyneux talk about it. I'm like, okay, it makes a lot more.
Let me ask you a personal question. Since you are a race realist, so to speak, would you be willing to date outside of your race?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Being a race realist doesn't mean you have to be a race purist or a biological determinist. Like, I've always liked white girls. Always. Like, I've never. I'm sorry, but I don't find most Hispanic girls all that attractive. I've always liked whites or Asians. I don't know. I just like light skin tone. Is that a crime? I don't know.
No, it's not. It is your right to have a preference. I would feel just the same towards anyone who has preference for dark-skinned girls. It's your choice. This is why I'm a believer that if you want to date your own race, that's your right. If you want to date outside of your race, that's your right too. So I believe that it is an individual right to make that decision. The government.
And by the way, white people, if you're really so concerned about there not being enough white children, make more white babies. Stop shaming us woke minorities just because we're dating a white person and accusing us of white genocide. Seriously, that's obnoxious.
Well, again, like it's like how do you say it? Like you can't really blame them either. It's because how do you say it? Like a lot of these white people are feminists or beta males, and so like that's another reason why they're not mating too. That's the excuse that they can. That's the excuse they could use.
Yeah, I know, but like, why doesn't the alt-right just make more babies instead of bitching about us interracial couples?
Okay, so here's the thing, Peter. As someone who have traveled extensively, it is clearly apparent that because of the boomers conservative failing to correct the culture war, in the span of a generation, it has produced negative results, such as it has caused men within the conservative movement in this country to become emasculated, and it has caused a supply of feminine women to dwindle. So the women that guys, especially beta males, are looking forward to are, someone who is divorced with lots of baggage, or with someone with a single mother with multiple number of kids, or someone who is morbidly obese and doesn't want to take care of herself, or someone who's good looking but happens to have an SJW mindset. So in a country like this, especially in this day and age, men are kind of screwed unless if you're a good looking guy with a lot of money and power. So unfortunately, feminism has caused a lot of negative results on American society. And that's why, unless if you have looks, status, and money, no women would want to date you.
That's why you really got to give it to the traditionalists for actually having standards.
Well, I would say that like there are too many independent women in the conservative movement as well. Because, for example, like you mentioned earlier, why are white people mating, right? And what's interesting is that Lauren Southern, I believe she talks about that, but then like a lot of people called her out saying, well, why aren't you married? Like, why aren't you making a sandwich for your husband? It's like, and here's the thing, and that's the problem. Like, for example, like I noticed that amongst the conservative movement, especially amongst baby boomer conservatives, a lot of the women, yes, they're Republican. Yes, they might claim to be tradicons, like traditional conservatives, right? But then like they'll say something about, well, you can't control me. No man will control me. I'm a free, independent, conservative woman. I'm thinking, what's so conservative about you? Like you're saying how no man will control you. Then like I'll post like a Bible quote, just troll them, right? I'll post like Ephesians 5:22 where it talks about how the woman, like how the Christian woman needs to submit to her husband. And it's funny is that a lot of these women claim to be Christians. They claim to be conservative Christian women, yet they act so very independently. I'm like, well, that's kind of a contradiction, It's like and I mean, like, so my question is, are you really a traditional conservative, or are you just a right-wing feminist?
Yeah, and that is definitely a very difficult line of tread because, we're still trying to, we're breaking the conditioning. That is something that I think the right is trying to do now, which is why there's been this strong traditionalist tendency sort of returning to the right, where they're beginning to realize, hey, the sexual revolution didn't just affect the left; it affected us in the right too. Like we're not having big families. We're not. Our birth rates are nowhere near enough to replace us, the aging generations. And it's maybe there's nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home mother. Maybe there's nothing wrong with admitting to myself that I, as a woman, would be happiest if I was a mother, and that maybe it's okay if my husband's a breadwinner. Obviously, it's going to be well before that paradigm, shifts back around. But no, that is actually beginning to change within the right. I do see the push slowly and gradually, to start making more babies. And again, it's another question of, is it too little, too late? Again, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I have some answers for you guys. In order for the concept of family to become popular again, we have to resolve the culture war, and that is to make feminism less popular. And that may take a lot of effort and time to see desirable results. Secondly, the concept of time. I'll be frank with you. The U.S. work-life balance sucks.
Yes, Americans, it is absolutely atrocious.
Too much. They have no time for themselves. Even they can't even have time for themselves. That's why you don't see a lot of events like Kilroy on a consistent basis, because we don't fucking have time. Secondly, third of all, is money. You have to have time and money to get shit done. We don't have, why we don't have a sense of community? I'll tell you why. Because we don't have time. We're overworked. We're too hyper individualistic to a point where we don't care about our fellow brothers and sisters in this country. And because of such cultural shift that took place since the 60s, there is no sense of community. So it's basically we're living a dog-eat-dog world. We're all in it for ourselves, and that's why you don't see older conservatives going out and mingle with other conservatives, or even younger conservatives don't have time because they're so busy worrying about his or own thing. So the best way to break that cycle is to have more events. And also, as far as time, I feel that the digital age has made it possible to where people can work remotely. And the good thing about remote jobs is it allows more and more younger professionals to be able to have more time for himself and herself. And hopefully they'll be able to have time to find the right person. And that, to me, could be the key to build a successful community.
Well, I can actually back that up with evidence because I did study business and I actually did sort of delve into the small business world a little bit myself. And yeah, the rise of stay-at-home business is really huge, especially among millennials. Where we
travel. We love traveling. We love traveling. We love to go see different places. We're not like the boomers where we all want the white picket fences. We want to have the 9-to-5 job, and we just don't want to go travel the world and live life to the fullest. They have a totally different mindset. And my narrative is, you can be a traditionalist, you can believe in marriage and family and all that jazz, but at the same time, you can be adventurous, you can be exciting, you can be daring, you can live life to the fullest. It doesn't have to be a young single guys kind of thing. It could be anybody. And that is the point that I'm driving home. And that is, in order for us to win not only the culture war, but also making families popular again, we have to radically change the way we work, the way the workforce structures. And also, we got to bring this topic of work to life. Why is it that Americans work too damn hard but get little in return? And
well,
this is not
that has to do more with wage depression because of our neoliberal economics and our obsession with cheap labor
and illegal immigration.
What's that?
Illegal immigration.
Illegal immigration has a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, wage depression. That's another huge problem, is that people bitch and moan that, oh, well, a minimum wage should be higher. I'm like, dude, that's what happens when you let too many people in at once. But no, getting back to your point. No, Generation Z has rejected this entirely. Because let's look at it this way. Let's look at the world that Generation Z has had to grow up in. Anyone born between 95 and 2010. For one thing, they've never lived in a world without identity politics. It's always been normal to say, oh, men are this, white people are that, and a lot of them have grown to really hate it because, because on the one hand, they were raised to say, hey, content of character, not color of skin. But then they come to realize that their bourgeois teachers and professors and media figures don't even keep their own standards. Not only that, they've never really lived in a world without war. This incessant this incessant war on terror, as it were. A lot of these younger kids have grown up with either crazy hippie parents or SJW parents or single parent households. And they've begun to see that they've been missing out on a lot. Like, Generation Z craves family. Generation Z craves traditional values because they've seen us last three generations as being nihilistic, empty promises that were never delivered on, and a bunch of unhappy people who wasted their entire lives, and they want nothing to do with it. Generation Z is the complete repudiation of boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials. So again, I very much have hope for the young generation. Like, I can even see a difference in them. I was born the last year of the baby boomer generation, 94. So I sort of share some traits with both. But even people who are like,
you're based on the year you were born, you're more of a younger millennial than
I'm a millennial. I definitely share traits with both. I was born on that dividing line. But no, Gen Z has seen the moral relativism and the utter nihilism it has caused society to have, and the utter degeneration of all things culture, all things community, all things of any sort of value. And they're sick of the empty promises of empty pleasure. They want meaning in life, and yeah, they're a very traditionalist generation. And even like my little brother, for example, is only about 10 years younger than me. He is more conservative and traditionalist than even I am. And he fights his teachers in class about politics and wins. And he's in high school. My little brother's in high school, and
that gives me a lot of hope.
Yes, he spars a lot with his world geography teacher.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, a lot of these public school teachers, they're not really as educated as they would like us to think they are.
Dude, from what my little brother tells me, his world geo teacher is a complete and utter moron. Because, let's be honest, the left hasn't really had to defend their position for like a good 50 years. because they've taken over academia and locked themselves into an echo chamber where nobody questions their ideas. And now all of a sudden they have a bunch of young students who are saying, F you, I'm going to question every damn thing you say, and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, well, they forget that they themselves were part of that one generation many years ago where they said F you, right? And then now they become in position. Now they're in positions of authority, and now they're just shocked that the next generation is questioning them.
Yeah, they've all these people who grew up thinking they were anti-establishment, suddenly they realize they've become the establishment, and now the youngest generation wants not a damn thing to do with them. So no, I do very much have hope for Gen Z, especially since the other big factor I forgot to mention, Generation Z has never really lived in a world without the internet. It's all they've known, for all their media, all their entertainment. I didn't even really do much on the internet till I was in like 4th grade. And even then very sparsely. It wasn't until high school that I started really figuring out, all the crazy stuff I could do on the internet. Whereas my little brother, he's grown up on it his whole life. And he knows more jargon than I do. He's more familiar with the tendencies of online communities more than I do. And it's insane. Like he's just shy of 10 years younger than me, and yet I can tell he's from a completely different generation than me. So the young
thing is, like you're saying, there's hope for them because they're going on YouTube all the time, and guess what? There's lots of videos on YouTube. A lot of videos that the left wingers don't want the young generation to see, but they can't stop them because the more you censor, the more curious a human being is.
Exactly. More Streisand effect.
Yeah. It's basically like the forbidden fruits. Adam and Eve were told not to eat the fruit, but they still ate it. Right. But in this case, it's not like a bad fruit. It's a good fruit. If young kids watch, right-wing bloggers, or this conversation right here, maybe we might have some kind of impact on some young person's life. I don't know. But we're doing something.
And also, not to mention, because you see a bunch of kids on social media are saying the things that we've been saying for years, in essence, we are normalizing our message. The message has been normalized to a point where people are no longer being triggered. I'm talking about kids who are open-minded. They're not going to be they're going to be desensitized to a point where if the normies were to try to normalize, basically re-normie them back into their space, it's not going to be successful because once you take the person out of the normies world, it's going to be really difficult to go back.
Once you take the red pill, you never want to go back to the blue pill world.
Never. I don't want to be a blue pillar at all. When I say red pill, I don't want to be red pill, not only just politically, but socially, culturally, and even financially. A blue pill take on finance is spend as much as you want on your credit cards, and it will build up your credit score. That is a blue pill mentality. A red pill mentality is don't spend money on credit card. Increase your cash flow. Put your money into gold and silver. Diversify your portfolio. Build up an emergency fund, and get a decent job making good money in the right field. That is a red pill take on money and careers.
Yeah, and the millennial generation is kind of the one that started waking up to that, to getting the hell out of white collar America. But Gen Z especially completely repudiates or is repelled by the idea of college.
Nobody wants to work in the cubicle office.
No, nobody does it, and I sure as hell don't. And I even second guess myself on whether or not I want to do this history professor thing. I see it as more of a necessity, but who knows?
Can I be honest? I'll be honest with you. If you don't like working at the office, you don't like this, typical 9-to-5 job, get the hell out. You have the right to say no.
It's mainly a parent thing,
What makes you happy? Just to get an extra paycheck so that your self-identity will be compromised, or would you rather get both the money and the freedom to do whatever the hell you want to do?
Let's not forget.
If I wanted to be dead honest, I'd love to do this YouTube thing that I started as as like a career, and like maybe temporarily hold like a part-time job in like Best Buy or something like that, just to pay some bills. And then once this gets big enough, make this my
cybersecurity. Look, hear me out. Get into cybersecurity, make 6 figures in your 20s, and once you make enough money and get really good in the job, you can create your own company as a consultant, make great money, work remotely, get into day trading, make some money, do the YouTube thing on the side, and once you get big, it's sky's the limit. Do what Roaming the Millennial's been doing. Follow what she did, but she has her niche. You gotta find your niche that will resonate with the vast majority of the silent majority. I mean, if that makes sense.
Well, again, it depends on which topics you talk about and everything. Now, here's the thing. The reason why you want to be a history teacher, I assume, is because you have so much knowledge. You have so much truth. You have this red pill, and you want to spread the red pill amongst your students. You want them to swallow the pill.
Not only that, but the university needs to start having more conservatives and libertarians as professors, because even though university is beginning to be choked by the young generations wanting not a damn thing to do with it, university will still be around for a while, and it will take a long time before the Marxists are purged from it. And Dr. Jordan Peterson is only the beginning of it. Like, there has to be more.
So you want to be the next Dr. Jordan Peterson. If that's the case, I totally support your future endeavors.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I said, I'm very torn on that. Like, I love history, and it really pisses me off that the 20th century, specifically the 20th century, is so misunderstood by people, especially World War II. Like, have y'all seen Black Pigeon Speaks video on how World War II created the new foundation myth for the West?
Well, I've seen, like, I think I've seen it. Like, it's been a long time ago, though. But yeah, like, I watch some of his videos once in a while.
He's a really good content creator. I'd say check him out more frequently. He made this really good video saying that the West has never been the same since World War II. It created this new toxic, destructive foundation myth where Hitler is seen as the ultimate evil, even though Stalin was way worse. Just saying, Hitler was child's play compared to other people throughout history.
Actually, I think I've seen that video with Black Pigeon, and like I got a different opinion on that.
What's your take on it? That the West has never been the same since World War II?
Because I agree. I agree that it's never been the same, but basically. But when people try to compare Stalin and Hitler, I'm like thinking, they're kind of equal.
Stalin was way worse. Isaac knows a lot more about the crazy shit the Soviets did, and trust me, the Nazis were child play. The Nazis were child's play.
Again, personally, my personal opinion, I got a different opinion on that. I mean, I've heard the other side. I've heard the other side story, but I still come to the conclusion that they're kind of. I'd say Stalin and Hitler are basically kind of equal. Whatever, no big deal.
It's up to dispute. But basically, since World War II, Hitler, Nazism, and just nationalism in general have been seen as the ultimate of evils. The history of the West is not one of noble pioneers trying to fight for freedom.
Yeah, but rather, I agree with that part. Yeah, I agree with that part. Yeah,
it's become a history of oppression, of colonialism, of racism, etc.
Well, basically, it's been like what happened. For example, what you're trying to say is that they're trying to make it like, let's say, more of a white guilt, Western guilt. You guys, like, for example, they're trying to say with the Germans, like they're trying to tell the Germans, hey, you guys had Hitler, so you guys should still feel guilty. I'm thinking that's kind of BS. The war happened so many years ago. I get it if they try to do the guilt scenario.
And drop them again. I'm gonna wait till they come back. And I'll see about doing a proper closeout because they've been going on for forever. Okay, Robert, you back?
Hey, yeah, I'm back. This is the third time it happened, and
It's
I
getting
just wanted to.
it's getting kind of late, so I guess we can sort of
Yeah, I
wind this
just wanted
down.
to. Yeah, I agree. Hey, Peter, I just wanted to personally say thank you for inviting us to be on the show, and as a personal favor, just don't put out my last name. Just my first name is fine. So
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
yeah, and I really enjoy having this conversation with you and Mark. And I know Isaac hasn't said much, but I'm pretty sure he enjoys our conversation.
Yeah, he probably does. He's just really busy with this new dog that his girlfriend got and stuff.
Hey guys, I'm back. Yeah, it cut me off for some reason. I don't know why.
It dropped you guys again, and I'm thinking it's kind of late for all of us, so we were just going to sort of wind this down.
All right. Well, let me say this. It's okay to be white.
Yes, I agree. It is okay to be white. White is beautiful.
And there's nothing wrong with being a nationalist as well.
No, I very much agree. I don't see with this I don't understand why there has to be this pathological hatred for being proud of your country, your history, and your culture. Now, granted, I might be Hispanic, so I might not technically share the culture of America, but I consider myself part of the American race, the historical race. I may not biologically be tied.
You're an American nationalist. That is what you are. You're an American nationalist who happens to be Hispanic, but irrespective of your racial background, anybody who loves this country can be a nationalist, regardless of where your ancestors came from.
Yeah.
So thank you so very much for being with us. And we'll talk again soon.
All righty.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Gotta do this again. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us, bro.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. And here's to a successful Kilroy 2.0 next year. And I'll see if I can maybe be go to Mythicist Milwaukee just because roaming is going, and she really wanted me and Isaac to try to come if we could.
Yeah, I will be there with you guys in spirit. I may not go this time around, but hopefully there's a lot more event after Milwaukee.
Yeah, here's hoping. So this is sort of the end to 3/5 news, I guess, for tonight. I know it wasn't as much news as it was discussion. I mean, we did cover the two big items of Kanye West and North Korea, but I don't know. I think it's enough to qualify as news. Otherwise, this was kind of just shit posty and circle jerky. But gentlemen, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No problem.
Bye.